Welcome to the world famous Bitcoin Original Gangster, the show that takes no shit when it comes to SegWit. On this show, we'll be defending Bitcoin gangster style and exposing the shit in shitcoins. The idea of this show is that you ask us your questions on crypto and we'll tell you all that we know. Let's get the disclaimers out of the way. All the opinions that you hear on this show are opinion and must only ever be taken as opinion. They are never to be taken as any form of advice, family, financial, sexual or otherwise. And on that note, let's rock and roll. Oh, fantastic. That looks really good. Yeah, great stuff.
Excuse the, I'm in the process of growing my apocalypse beard, so I haven't shaved for about a week, which is kind of embarrassing because I was hoping I would have more, but...
are you doing a Chico crypto and not cutting your hair until Bitcoin gets to like 100 grand or something like that?
that would be fun. Hopefully that would happen sooner than later. I figured my wife and I were joking. We'd just do a month without shaving since we're all like quarantined anyway.
What, and... both of you? She must look like a right side.
No, that would be a problem for me if she could.
Yeah, check out these hairy legs, lovely jubbly.
Yeah,
they'd love that.
No, she'll still be grooming.
Yeah, make sure of that.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, especially at such a short notice. I mean,
of course.
I've known who you are for quite a while, but I know there aren't many people that know me. There are quite a few people that know my pseudonym. But generally because I go by a pseudonym and a caricature, I sort of have to rely on my knowledge and personality to get me out there. And it's like suddenly when people start listening to what I'm saying, they're like, oh, actually this guy's kind of good. Who is he? And it's kind of like because they're not really too sure who I am. You know. But in other words, it gives me an excuse for proof of work. You know.
Yep.
So
I was impressed with your interview with TK. I guess you're right. Like the pseudonym can be a limitation unless you're really putting yourself out and creating stuff. So especially like you've got kind of a cheeky, funny name on Twitter, Satoshi, and you have like a funny cartoon image. You know, like it would be easy for someone to dismiss you, but without knowing, or hearing you. But once I listened to your video from TK too, I thought, oh, he's a sharp guy.
Yeah, well, I actually sort of like developed a personality from the BSV channel. That's kind of like where my name sprung from as well. So I got into Bitcoin after I got absolutely wrecked in the crash of early 2018, and after that, because I've written a book on my story. But I literally had nothing, at the age that I am, sort of middle age, having to call on my parents saying, look, I can't afford to live. It was utterly humiliating. I was just like, where on earth do I start? So I was kind of like challenged myself to at least sort of like track down and have a coffee with the guy who I thought was responsible for creating Bitcoin, and that's kind of like what my story was about, because I was an absolute wreck. But honestly, it was horrendous. But I know what other people go through. But because of the connections that I made, due to the situation that I was in, because I basically had nothing to lose. I was just like, look, I don't really care. I'm just gonna do this. I was able to contact sort of like Captain Bitcoin from the BSV channel and say, look, I've got contacts. I've heard your show. You seem to be really enthusiastic. I think I could help. Yeah. And so it went on from there, and it kind of like the show grew from, I think it had sort of 500 subscribers when I first went on there. I got it up to 2,500 subscribers, and at one point we were getting like 1,000 views in one show. Yeah. But then stuff happened and he kicked me off the show. But he's since apologized, so that's all right.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. We're all right now. But this is kind of this is really interesting chatting to you, because I haven't actually had a chat with somebody who's been sitting on the fence over these cryptocurrencies for quite some time. Just because I've been on this sort of voyage of discovery, and when the dominoes start to fall, you just like, there is so much information to be gathered, that you almost kind of like I've kind of like made my way to the I suppose you would call it the upper echelons of Bitcoin. And then sort of added my own background to it, which was financial services and law and economics, and sort of came at it from a different way because I'm not really particularly technical, and kind of like, there's tech, and like people are saying, this works and that works, and there's utility here, and I was just like, but that exists on other coins as well. What is it about this that that I can be sure on? Because somebody explains to me about tech, and double hash function stuff, and I'm just like, bit beyond me, but so what? And so then I came at it from the monetary side, which is kind of like my background, and I've realised that even though I thought other people would know what I already knew, I very quickly realised that they didn't, and that my sort of view on it was almost sort of like nobody else had it in the space. And then I started explaining it to people, and even I did a presentation the other day in the north of England in York for the Northern Blockchain Group conference, and even Shadders, who says that he has the concentration of a gnat when it's anything not to do with programming and stuff like that, said I kept him entertained for half an hour, and he hadn't realised a few things that I'd explained, and that was actually during my pitch in the conference. Whereas like normally, sort of everybody that I'm in contact with, I've told my theories anyway, and we've had like long talks and discussed it and had a good laugh over it. So what I'd really like to do with you, because when I first saw your interview on the BSV channel, I think it was with you and Isaac and TK and Steve. You were saying you had, what was it, a BSV mug and something else, a BCH tie pin or something like that?
Yeah, I had a BCH shirt on, but I had a BSV mug that I was drinking my coffee out of.
There we go. So, I may as well pre-warn you, but that by the end of this interview, BCH will be out of your life forever.
Well, I think you kind of mischaracterized my views, by the way, on the show with TK.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we can maybe get into that as well. I think you're probably going to find that I already agree with you on pretty much everything. I mean, I've been in Bitcoin for a long time. I have been a big blocker since I first heard about Bitcoin, and when the big block issue became a bigger and bigger deal, in that people were actually actively trying to stop scaling, I became a more active big blocker. I was involved in Bitcoin Cash as soon as it forked from BTC, was all behind that vision. And I mean, I can say it openly. I think that the vision that BCH had when it first forked is the one that BSV is trying to follow, certainly much more closely than the BCH fork and the BCH community today. I mean, there's no question about it.
So what is it that still makes you drink out of your BCH, or still wear your BCH shirt?
Oh, well, it's a comfortable t-shirt, and it fits well, and it's very soft, and I like the way it looks.
All right, well, I'm gonna make you feel extremely uncomfortable in that by the end of this.
No, I mean, I don't mind. So okay, so maybe we can get into it, because I don't want to just monologue on it. I'd love for you to direct the conversation, and I'll respond. But I would say that so I've always had the position that I want to be in a position where I can't lose, and that's the position that I kind of put myself in with Bitcoin, and from the start, as soon as BCH forked. I mean, I didn't rush to sell all my BTC. Why would I? I mean, I got a free amount, the same amount of Bitcoin Cash, right? And when Bitcoin Cash and BSV forked, I openly said, look, I'm not selling either UTXO. I'm going to hold them both and let both communities fight over me, and we'll see where the cards lie. But I may, just because I say that openly, and because that's how my I guess what's how I act. Doesn't mean that I don't think that one side has by far a greater chance of winning, or one that is more appealing to me.
It does.
I just don't like to personally assume more risk. I mean, I can understand it. Like if you haven't been in Bitcoin for since before the forks, and you weren't getting BTC and you weren't getting BCH as much. I mean, it's kind of a different game you can play, but for a lot of us, it's like, well, okay. I mean, I can literally sit and do nothing, and I'll make a fortune regardless, and I'll be fine regardless, and I won't lose anything. To me, that's a much better position than trying to intelligently predict what's going to win, even if I do have my own thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I sort of took the route of like, I need to figure out what is going to win, and and stay there, basically.
Yeah. No, and that's fine. And I honestly, like, I think right now, like I've said many times, I think BSV has a better chance of winning right now. I mean,
it's the
Bitcoin
only
Cash
one that has any chance of winning.
Well, okay, so I disagree with that. I disagree with that for a very specific reason, which maybe we'll agree on, maybe we won't.
We won't.
So hear me out. So I agree that the vision that BSV has is the only one that can win. That is a fundamentally different thing than executing on that vision. I have been through 2 or 3 now, I think 3 to be honest, community takeovers of Bitcoin. Now, BSV, I think, is in the best position right now to avoid something like that, given that there is a high emphasis on locking down the protocol, on not allowing that to be constantly tinkered with. But I don't think it's there yet, personally. And so until it gets there, I don't think that it necessarily, as BSV, will necessarily win. I think it has the greatest chance, but I'm open to the idea that the BSV business community could start acting stupidly. I'm open to the idea that the BSV investors could start acting stupidly, or that the developers could start acting stupidly and do things that are contrary to the original vision. Why? Because I've seen that happen over and over again in Bitcoin. I've been part of that several times. And I don't think saying, oh, this can't happen again, history can't repeat itself, is an intelligent position. But I agree with you that I think that right now, BSV certainly at least has the best guiding philosophy, in that we're not going to allow the community and the developers to dick around with the protocol constantly.
Okay, so what is it that still makes you think BCH has a chance?
I mean, I haven't really said that recently. I suppose the reason BCH would have a chance would be if BCH decides to become a lot more like BSV and realizes the errors of their ways. And if that were to happen, that would be an interesting thing, because there's a lot of existing business on BCH right now. There's a lot of existing big crypto players, and we can debate about how relevant those people are. But to me, that would be an interesting thing. If BCH were to decide, and the miners and the developers were to decide, hey, look, it's clear by now that this constant forking is catastrophic to the development of Bitcoin and the growth of Bitcoin. And there's no question about it. This whole miner tax thing that they tried to push through almost caused another fork, and may still cause a fork. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen. It was a ton of drama. It just killed a lot of momentum. And if they were to learn their lesson and decide, okay, well, we're going to stop overreacting against BSV and saying that everything, and allowing BSV to have a monopoly on a lot of the good ideas in Bitcoin, then that would be interesting. I don't think that that's necessarily likely to happen, but I'm open to the possibility.
They won't have a choice in the end.
I'm open to the possibility. Well, if BSV were to win, they would just have to come over. But I'm also open to the possibility that, like, for example, I'm also open to the possibility that in theory that BTC hard forks tomorrow to larger blocks and decides that the Blockstream cabal that took BTC over was idiotic. And I think that if that actually happened, and that they went back to the original protocol, again, this is very, very unlikely, But I think if that actually happened and they did that, I think BTC would actually have a far greater chance of success than BSV because it has a bigger network effect right now. And when people are buying BTC, average retail investors or just people just speculating on it, they're not thinking about anything but, oh, that's the name that says it's Bitcoin, BTC, right? They think about the brand name and they're buying it because of that. I don't think the level of knowledge or insight that people within the community have disseminated outside into the real world. I don't think anybody really cares about the inside drama. So again, that's all very unlikely to happen, but who knows what's going to happen?
Well, I can tell you what's going to happen if you want.
Tell me what's going to happen.
So basically, institutions are going to realize that Bitcoin, which is BSV, saves them millions, if not billions, on cost efficiencies, particularly with their data. Because as I explained to TK and in these other interviews, businesses do not record data on bits of paper anymore and store them in filing cabinets. Everything is digital.
Well, actually, a lot of businesses still do that. By the way, there's a lot of regulatory compliance that requires paper documentation. So it's not quite accurate to say that, but I agree with the general idea.
Yeah, well, yeah, I haven't got time for specifics, but sweeping generalizations are allowed. But generally, let's say if one huge corporation, a multinational corporation, needs to share digital information between their offices in the United States and Australia, for example, but there's a huge amount of data on a single file. It can only be sent via a closed network which they have built themselves, like a private network. They can't just simply share it over the internet because the amount of data in the file is just simply too big. It's just absolutely enormous, So that means that they have to spend time building effectively their own privately encrypted database. Now there's a problem there because it means that they own that database and they can't really allow other people to share it because they've got access to the information, they can delete it, they can mess around with it, all the problems. Whereas now you can put all of that information, literally all of it, onto the blockchain and you can share it with anyone, anywhere in the world, instantly. For free.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking to the choir. I mean, we agree with all this. I 100% agree. I think that's an awesome thing.
Yeah. So corporations will be buying it for the data efficiencies. They will also be looking at, institutional investors, for example. If they're smart enough, the first thing they're going to be looking at are the scaling patents, of which N-Chain have probably over 90%, maybe even more than that, in terms of scaling of blockchain.
Yeah, so there's a difference between having a patent. Sorry, I'm an American, so I guess
that's all right. Vitamins, potato.
There's a difference between having one and being able to enforce it. So a significant difference. So I would love to see. I don't know if I necessarily agree with their patent strategy. But it is what it is. They're doing it, so you might as well live within that reality, I suppose. But there's a difference between actually having a patent and being able to enforce it in a court of law, practically. So I would be very curious to see if that's actually going to be enforceable or not.
They won't need to enforce it anyway because basically, with Bitcoin being a medium of exchange. A medium exchange is a tool, which means that it's competitive by nature. So are you familiar with wampum?
With what?
Wampum. Have you heard of wampum?
I don't know.
No? Okay, so wampum was a medium of exchange that the North American Indians used.
I know that, yeah.
Yeah. So the North Americans were trading using wampum, and it was quite a good system that they had. They understood proof of work. So the shells that they used were very rare shells, sort of like found on a unique beach. And then the beads that they created were effectively the proof of work. So they understood the concept of a medium of exchange, which is really good. But the Europeans came over and they used gold. And because gold was even more precious, small amounts were more valuable, and having a smaller amount was far more easier to trade than huge amounts of wampum. And gold was also highly malleable and divisible. And also, and it was far more scarcer. So therefore, you could be sure that the amount of gold you were getting was actually probably likely more genuine than the wampum you were receiving. And because gold was more useful as a medium of exchange, effectively wampum was phased out. And that's just simply what's going to happen with cryptocurrency. People are just simply going to use the cryptocurrency that fulfills and accelerates trade in the best way.
Yeah. So where do we disagree?
I guess when you were talking about BCH and you were sort of like umming and ahhing, maybe. Oh, well, I guess I was going to. We were talking about things being competitive. Let me think.
No, I said the only way to be competitive would be to copy what BSV is doing.
Oh, we were talking about the patents. That was it. So it was.
But patents are different than patents are different than what we're talking about now. Gold and the facilitation of exchange.
But my point.
Patents may or may not help that. I don't know.
But my point was that those patents will be effectively irrelevant very soon. Because
I agree. I don't think the patents were ever relevant to begin with, and I think when people focus, but you brought them up. You said I agree with that. I think the patents are not really an important thing, to be honest. And I doubt whether they're even enforceable, and I don't think that whether they're enforceable or not actually matters that much.
Well, it's important to have them though, use them because just in case you had somebody else that tried to register a patent that actually hindered the spread of Bitcoin BSV as it was going. Somebody else could put a spanner in the works. Whereas if somebody else has got the patent, it just means that spanner is no longer there.
Sure, unless the person that gets the defensive patent becomes the person doing that themselves. So like there are historically many cases in which companies have, as I understand it, have done something as a defensive patent and then used it offensively later on, and have basically changed their tune. So, I don't really think the patents are enforceable, so I don't really think it matters. But I also think that I don't really particularly want to trust one company arguing that my patents are defensive, because I think that they could always change their tune anytime they want it.
True, but it's just from the point of N-Chain, who actually do own that patent. It gives investors confidence in them.
Yeah, I think international businesses, enterprise businesses, like to see patents. So, from that perspective, I could see them being useful for getting large enterprise companies on the blockchain, because it does seem like enterprise companies, like to deal with other companies that have some sort of imaginary or not protection on their intellectual property.
Well, a medium of exchange is all about trust. So therefore, if you know that what you're thinking, let's say you have an idea, like you think, I think Bitcoin BSV, we might use that, but before we put our time and efforts in this, let's just reduce our risks as much as possible. What can you show us? Well, we've got all these patents. All right, great. Nobody else has got them. So not only is it by far the best medium of exchange, it's also the one that's got all the patents as well. It's just peace of mind.
Yeah, I don't think the patents matter at all, to be honest. We can get into a huge debate, but that'll probably bore people. I don't think the patents are relevant.
Well, if you're an investor, if you're a multinational company, patents, like I said, are peace of mind, because you could get, for example, Blockstream or IBM jumping in saying, oh, you can't use that, or just simply using it to distract other people, saying, oh, we've got this patent, we've got that patent. Whereas the fact is they've got nothing.
Themselves could do that too.
The what?
The existing defensive patent holder themselves could do the same thing.
So it's kind of like a tool that you can pull from your belt and use if you need to.
But what if they decide they want to use it even if they don't need to?
A patent is only required if somebody else is trying to copy it or use your idea.
Yeah, but what if they decide that they're just going to start enforcing their patents and saying, because the idea behind Nchain, if I understand it, is like, oh well, we're going to let companies use BSV for free using our patents. Like we're not going to enforce them unless they're not using them on BSV, the technology on top of BSV, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what if they just decided, well, okay, like we've got a lot of enterprise activity on top of BSV now. A lot of people have bought into this system. They've spent a lot of money and investment into this system. What if we decide, oh, let's start enforcing them now?
What, against the people who are using them?
Yeah, just to say charge licensing fees on top of to use BSV at a certain point.
Okay,
Maybe
well the reason they wouldn't do that is because if they did that, they would devalue BSV. They want to encourage people to use it. They've already said that, their company and everybody else in it benefits more from the increase in the value of BSV than they would from anybody paying them a license fee or anything like that.
Yeah, so they've said that. That's fine. That's great.
Well, Bitcoin is an economic model. So it's kind of like, why would you enforce a patent if it's actually going to devalue BSV?
Why would miners not raise the block size back when BTC was going through the block size debate if it was going to make BTC worse?
Because they're stupid.
Exactly. No. So I agree. That's exactly right. What I'm saying is trusting that. So the Bitcoin economic model is brilliant. It's awesome, right? But people can still be stupid. And they can and someone being stupid can actually be smart in one moment and stupid later. So one of the reasons all those BTC miners got to be so big is because they were very intelligent. They were very smart and they invested in the right time and they built the right business and they grew to be some of the most powerful and dominant Bitcoin miners in the space. And all of them wanted to raise the block size, and yet ultimately they didn't. They made a stupid decision, right? So they were intelligent, and then they did something stupid later. I don't think the idea that like because a business says something intelligent once means that they're always going to do the right thing in the future. So I sort of reject this idea that you can necessarily trust Nchain just because it's in their economic self-interest. If only because I don't necessarily believe that people are always good at finding out what their economic self-interest is. That's why businesses fail all the time, because people make bad decisions. So, my hope would be that, yeah, they would never actually use these patents to do anything, and that they couldn't use these patents to do anything even if they wanted to, and that we would just get on with the business of actually just using Bitcoin for what it's meant to be used for.
But the fact that they've already said you can use these patents for free is an indicator that they understand that they're encouraging people to use them, which adds value to Bitcoin.
Yeah, and the fact that the BTC miners were all signaling to raise the block size was also an indicator that they understood the importance of raising the block size.
And why didn't they?
Well, I think they caved to social pressure. Personally, I think they caved to the. That's
ridiculous. Miners are driven by profit only.
Well, why do you think they didn't do it?
I think because they don't understand. I think because they didn't understand money. And I also think that Blockstream sold them a load of BS which they believed because they didn't understand money.
No, they were all signaling to raise the block size. And even still, like Jihan Wu, for example, even after raising the blocks, like even after the whole segment, he still wanted to raise the block size. I mean, they were all signaling for it. They all backed out at the last minute. Why? I don't think it was because they thought it was in their financial self-interest to not raise the block size at all. I totally disagree with that. I think they caved to social pressure.
No. Okay, well, I would.
Were you around in 2017 watching what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what did you see?
So I saw Blockstream initially sort of coming in, you're driving the big blockers out with pitchforks effectively, and then scaring the miners into staying as they were. They're like, oh no, don't change, it's too risky. This could happen. That might happen. We don't want this.
Social pressure. That's not actually any real thing. That's just social manipulation. That's what I mean.
But they're trying to throw reasons at them that they did not understand.
Well, social pressure still has reasons. They're not literally saying like, oh,
but it's not just like you do this because we said so. They're saying you shouldn't do this because it's in your best interest not to. So it's manipulation. There's a difference between social pressure and manipulation.
Well, I think social pressure played a big part into it. I think a lot, like you actually watched several of the big companies basically decide, oh my God, like we're gonna lose a lot of, like they're gonna hurt us, they're gonna like boycott us if we don't do this, right? So they, while at the same time they knew that raising the block size made the most sense for Bitcoin, they took a very short-sighted approach to their immediate profit and decided that, oh my God, we may lose some users, people may boycott us. That to me is not, pursuing your financial self-interest.
It's ridiculous. It's basically digging themselves a hole that they can
Okay,
never
so
get out of.
yeah, so the point is that businesses can behave stupidly. So the idea that Enchain is always going to behave intelligently is to me, I think is irrational to think necessarily. Now, we'll see what happens, but ultimately, again, what I think is the patents aren't even going to really be important or relevant. And you've already basically conceded that. I thought you kind of agree that the patents are not that relevant.
Well, they would only be relevant if somebody was trying to compete, but they won't be able to compete.
Maybe they won't, but I'm not convinced that they will be enforceable. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens if a court case actually comes up where they're actually able to win something. And if they do, then whatever. But I don't right now personally see that happening or even mattering.
Well, I mean, let's take scaling for example. So BTC do not want to scale. They want
right
to.
Now they don't.
They want to. Well, they want to prevent the blockchain from being used. They want to destroy BTC. It's kind of obvious from my point of view that that's what they're trying to do. Every narrative that they have spun is all to do with not scaling, don't use it, it's a store of value, it's censorship resistant money, has to be small, don't spend it, don't use it, don't grow it. They have no intention of scaling it at all.
Yeah,
So,
not right now.
Well, why would they when their investors do not want it to become a global peer-to-peer electronic cash system?
Well, at one point the investors did.
The investors actually, what the investors in Blockstream did?
No, in Bitcoin and just in general, like, I mean, yeah, even in Blockstream. I mean, to be honest, if you go look back at the early things that Adam Back was saying, he was talking about raising the block size too. I mean, the idea that these guys all, had this view from the start is total. That's a manipulative view on their part. I mean, that's a lie. If you look at like Adam Back was talking about raising the block size, all of these guys were doing it. So, and there were a lot more people involved in Bitcoin at the time too. So what I mean is that
where did it come from? Where did it start? Where did this narrative start?
Well, I mean, the first person to talk about it was the first response to Satoshi Nakamoto. It was James A. Donald. So James A. Donald basically said that Bitcoin will never scale, and he started pushing the idea of some sort of pseudo second layer in order to make it scale.
And what was his rationale behind that?
Oh, very similar to the one that's used today. I don't think James A. Donald necessarily had any nefarious motive, though he isn't a kind of bad guy, in my opinion, from what I've seen about him online from his own website. He's not really a good person.
Well, it sounds to me, anybody who doesn't want to scale a blockchain doesn't want immutable data. They want ways to do things anonymously.
That would line up at the very least with what I've seen about James A. Donald.
Well, there you go. We can count him out because he's a crook.
More than that, I would say, yeah.
Oh, well, there we go. He'll be found out.
Yeah, so he that could have been his motive, certainly. I mean, I don't know what his actual motive was. I just know that he basically said Bitcoin wouldn't scale. So this narrative has been going on since the beginning, but some of the big players like Adam Back and some of these other guys pushing it now, those guys were definitely not arguing that Bitcoin couldn't scale in the very beginning. And then, people like Peter Todd started pushing it. People like Greg Maxwell started pushing it. And if you go look through the forums, it was pretty early on. People like Mike Hearn were calling these guys out and saying, you've got a secret agenda. And you've decided in advance that Bitcoin can't scale, and now you're just trying to justify it rather than starting from a premise of trying to figure things out first. Now, again, my only point is that big blockers made up the majority of BTC for a long time. The big block community was by far the biggest. I mean, there was no question. Even you see Mike Hearn and Gavin Andreessen both say that small blockers, people who don't think Bitcoin can scale, are a loud and stupid minority. And they were saying this in like 2013, 2014. Like these guys were a small, radical, idiotic minority who were able to get a lot of venture capital to go into this social engineering campaign to stop Bitcoin from scaling. But all I mean is that what I was trying to say really in the beginning was that just because the culture exists as it is now in BTC and is a bad one, doesn't mean that that could not theoretically change in some period of time before BSV or whatever has a chance to grow sufficiently. And if that were the case, I'm not saying that that's likely to happen. I'm just saying that if that were the case,
well, that's where these patents would come in useful.
The patents haven't been enforced in 10 years, so well,
they haven't needed to.
Well, I mean, there are interesting legal debates to be had about how long you can go without enforcing a patent before the patent becomes unenforceable.
Interesting. Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
So, for example, like I've been involved in indirectly with some businesses I've been involved with. I've been involved in some trademark disputes before, and the company that was suing them for trademark violation, and I know this is different than a patent, but it's still intellectual property, was found out to not have grounds to sue them for trademark violation because they had allowed them to use that for such a long time that it was no longer applicable to them. Now they could stop companies in the future from doing it, but these other groups that were already using it were basically grandfathered in because they had built their entire business on it, and it hadn't been enforced in basically 15, 20 years. So we'll see what happens, but I'm just not convinced the patents could be enforced.
Well, do you know who Jimmy Wynn is?
Yeah, I know Jimmy Wynn, and Jimmy's a smart guy.
Do you know what his profession is or background is?
Yeah, I know, but there are also other smart lawyers who disagree. So I'm not saying that Jimmy's not a very intelligent guy. I think Jimmy's one of like the best communicators in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah, but his background is intellectual property.
Yeah, I know, but there are other intellectual property lawyers who would argue differently, and that's the whole point. Like in any courtroom, there's always a defendant and a prosecutor, right? So there's two different sides in any courtroom of lawyers, and both of them will disagree on things. But I mean, saying just because one lawyer says one thing doesn't necessarily mean that lawyer is correct. The judge will ultimately decide.
True, but I mean, it always helps to have somebody of his standing, on your side. Probably making sure that what you're doing is correct, and the chances are that you will win should you need to.
It totally does help. So I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm saying that betting all your horses on that right now until you can actually see that this is indeed the case. I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, but it's like I said, it's just another string to the bow, though. So it's kind of like Nchain do have these patents. They have said people can use them for free, which indicates that they're not going to go back on their word because they realise that it actually adds value to the coin itself, which is what they want. And they've got an intellectual property lawyer on their side as well. So stacking up.
Every company has an intellectual property lawyer on their side.
You think we say what every company does have?
Yeah, most large enterprises have intellectual property lawyers. I mean, that's not a novel thing.
Oh, well, I mean, does Blockstream have one?
Yo, of course. Blockstream has patents too. Of course, Blockstream has an intellectual property lawyer. Blockstream has literally registered patents that they said were defensive. This is one of the whole reasons that BCH was forking, is because Blockstream was attempting to get defensive patents. What they claimed were defensive patents, but no one believed that crap. Everyone believed that Blockstream was going to ultimately use it to enforce their will upon the BTC chain. I mean, are you familiar with that or no? Because Blockstream has patents. Of course, Blockstream has patents. And I don't think they have as many as Nchain by far.
Oh yeah, I've seen graphs as to how, in comparison,
but Blockstream absolutely has patents, and they absolutely have a intellectual property lawyer. I mean, they have $120 million in funding or something like that. Of course, they have an intellectual property lawyer.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is why would they be looking at ways of scaling the blockchain purposely to just simply block people from scaling it when they don't want to?
Blockstream wants to scale. They want to scale off chain in a way that they can control and monetize. They don't. I mean, no, that's true. Like, it's not quite honest to say they don't want to scale. They don't want to scale the actual, first layer of the chain. Of course not. Like, they want to hamper that so that they can build a patented, intellectual property protected model on top of Bitcoin that they can profit from. I mean, no question.
Yeah, but did you read the article I sent you about reasonable expectation in trade?
No, I was driving, and so I got home literally like 5 minutes before the interview started. So I've been at a construction site all day. I've been really busy. So.
Oh, so well, let me explain it to you quickly about scaling off chain. So when the data goes through the chain, it is immutable, and it's that data that's.
We don't need to get in. I mean, I know all that.
Yeah,
that's new to me.
yeah, I'm going to.
I'm very I don't think that scaling off chain is a good idea. I think that you're going to open yourself up to all sorts of legal issues, and I think that it's likely not going to work very well anyway. I think it's already been proven that, which is why a lot of the main players now are saying things like, "Oh, well, Lightning Network is not a payments rail. Lightning Network's actually just one step. We need like the layer 3 or layer 4 in order. Like it's all bogus. It's just like it's like Scientology. They give you a new step that you need to achieve each way. I mean, that's kind of what's going on now. So I'm there's nothing new. I mean, I don't think we disagree. I think you maybe I'm wondering where you got this impression that I seem to think differently than you on things.
No. It was just I'm just sort of like trying to quash any questions that you might have. Like when you're saying, "Oh, this might happen, that might happen," I'm just like, "Well, chances are it probably won't."
Oh, well, I already said that. I think chances are it probably won't either. But I also thought at the time that chances were that Segwit 2x was going to go through, and it ended up not going through. And I also thought that Nchain would probably win the scaling of the hash war, and that ended up not happening either. So my predictions have not always been accurate.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, though, I mean, who could have foreseen, colluding with the exchanges and everybody, like just being so stupid, like really stupid. I mean, how could you?
That's my whole argument.
Roger seemed like an intelligent guy. Do you know what I mean?
Roger's a very intelligent guy.
He's not anymore.
Yeah, he is.
He's not. But we'll chat about that in a second. But let's just sort of like.
Well, you've made my point. Like, my point is that smart people will. That's my whole point. Who could have foreseen it, right? So I guess again, like that is my only point to be made is that things can actually change or take a route that you did not expect and that actually violates all your expectations of what that person's self-interest would have been.
Oh yeah. I'm extremely familiar with that concept. I mean, that happened to me when I got wrecked. I never, ever thought that I would ever be that stupid.
Yeah.
But I realised that I could be. Well, stupid and reckless. We
all had moments like that. I've had moments like that too, where I'm like, dude, you are like a complete idiot. And I've it doesn't mean you are, right? But it again, that's what I mean. Smart people, intelligent people who have a track record of success. There's no necessarily guarantees of future success.
Yeah. Totally in agreement there. But I'll just say, just quickly with the second layer solution thing that Blockstream are offering, unless you're going through a party that has is a registered money service business and has a money transmitter license, it means that the data that you're sending is not legal tender. So therefore, in trade, the medium of exchange is sent first, and then the good or service is expected in return. Now, if you do not get the good or service that you expect in return, hence like Misdescriptions Act, or you don't even get it whatsoever, you cannot invoke martial law and hold a gun to to the other person's head and say, right, you give us out or give my money back, because that's illegal. So you have to rely on the legal system to either enforce the contract or get your money back. So when you go to court and you say, well, look, I've sent them this medium exchange, the court will first of all look at it and say, well, have you sent the medium exchange that represents the value of the good or service that you expected? If you've just sent data, like an email, that hasn't gone through a money service business where they money transmit a license, it's not recognized as legal tender. Therefore, it has no value whatsoever, and therefore you have no right to expect the good or service in return. So it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I agree, at least with the idea that trying to make Bitcoin in such a way that it is directly confrontational to a lot of existing laws is pretty stupid. That makes no sense.
Yeah, because effectively the Lightning network is a bank. We've already got it. It's the banking network. They have money transmitter licenses, so no need for it.
It's very likely that Lightning nodes, especially because they're going to become larger and larger, that's sort of the economics of it, is that a small handful of them get the most liquidity and are the ones being routed through. And that's the only way it even becomes remotely profitable, because small nodes can't make any money. They're likely going to fall under very, very strict regulatory capture, which is just very dumb.
Really dumb. And also, it's kind of like they've already been telling people, don't use it. It's a store of value. It's censorship-resistant money. Keep the network small. Everybody's got to store the blockchain on their own computers. They have no intention of scaling it whatsoever.
No, certainly not on chain. I mean, and in a way that actually works for people. No, I mean, this is all about their attempt to capture the system, I think, and be the new banking system on top of it, in a very nefarious one too.
It will just fail because it won't work.
I don't think it will work either, but I think that I don't think that they intend to fail. Maybe they do. Maybe you can get very conspiratorial and think the entire goal is to fail, and that could be the case. Like, I've certainly entertained the idea that they have no intention of ever succeeding.
I believe you. That's what I think.
Psyops.
Totally.
But I think there's room for debate about that. I mean, they may intend to succeed and they may just fail. I mean, it's probably more likely that they're just being very, very stupid and a little bit nefarious as well.
Where do you think they got their $100 million from?
Well, I mean, I've seen some of the things. I've seen some of the theories. That would be interesting.
I think they've been paid to fail.
Yeah, and that could totally be the case. I've even said stuff like that on Twitter before. I think that's highly possible that they're deliberately trying to corrupt the system, basically.
Well, I mean, look at Segwit.
Yeah, but it could also be the case that they're not doing that. I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't even necessarily think that matters anymore. I mean, what matters is attempting to build a Bitcoin according to the original model, which we know works.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, let's put BTC to bed. Let's move on to BCH.
Yeah,
let's do that. So how come you still like wearing the shirt, other than the fact that it feels comfortable?
Well, like I said, I think that
because if you won't feel comfortable with it, you won't feel comfortable wearing it in the future because it will make you look stupid.
Well, I knew that wearing it would make me look stupid to the audience, because the audience is primarily BSV people, because BCH people don't like our show typically anymore. So are
you still in with some BCH people? Are you still in contact with them and stuff?
Of course I am. Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to write people off about a disagreement over a digital token. I have a lot of friends in Bitcoin Cash, and I'm not going to suddenly change that. I also have business and financial relationships in Bitcoin Cash. Oof. So if they're useful to me in some way that doesn't violate my own principles, then great. But regarding Bitcoin Cash specifically, I mean, I think that Bitcoin Cash should act more like BSV and stop taking some of the most important ideas, like things that we all agreed upon, like locking down the protocol back in the day, or scaling quickly, or that using the blockchain for anything you want rather than classifying certain kinds of transactions as spam. All of that's stuff that used to be agreed upon in BCH and now is basically taboo for maybe several reasons. And so my thought is people should stop behaving that way. And if I can convince them to stop behaving that way, then that's a good thing.
Bit late.
What?
Bit late.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea whether it's too late or not.
It is far too late.
Well, if it's too late, then it's too late. I mean, I guess I'm wondering like what else am I supposed to do? I'm in a
Get
position
out
where
quick.
what do I need to get out of? I'm fine.
BCH.
There's nothing that I can get. I mean, what do you mean get out?
What do any businesses or any investments that you have in BCH, just get them out quick because it is going to zero.
Oh, that's fine. Why would I worry about that?
What? Why would you worry about losing money?
Well, I mean, I'm more worried about assuming unnecessary risk. So, like, if BSV succeeds, I have no problem with BSV succeeding. I would love for that to happen.
Oh yeah, but what I'm saying is like when you're saying you don't like to take on any unnecessary risk, BCH is that risk.
Oh well, like I've
Just
said,
get rid of it.
I've sold quite a bit of Bitcoin Cash in the last year. I said that on several of the episodes that we've done with Isaac and Steve and everybody. I have other investments in BSV too.
How come you haven't sold all of it?
I have no reason to.
You've got
It's
no
sort of like
reason.
a drop in the bucket. I mean, I have plenty of BSV. I mean.
But you may as well sell all your BCH because it's going to go to zero. You're just holding it you're just holding it until it goes to zero. You're just waiting for it to go to zero if you're holding it.
No, I mean it might go to zero, but they also might start acting rationally and do something amazing. So.
I would say the chances of that are far less than the chances of BSV succeeding.
Fine. Every investor needs to decide for themselves what level of risk they want to assume and what that looks like. The great thing about owning all the forks is that you don't really need to choose unless you want to, and that's that.
But in terms of like, I mean, I went through the forks. I went from BTC straight to BCH, straight to BSV, like 100%. Because that's because I understood money, whereas I realized that sort of like quite a few other people didn't. So money, having legal protection in the trade, is fundamental to its utility. So corporates and those involved in global trade will never ever use a medium of exchange that is anonymous, because in order to prove that you have reasonable expectation in trade, you have to prove that you have actually sent the medium of exchange over. If the transaction is anonymous, I
don't think that Bitcoin Cash should try to be anonymous.
But that's what they're trying to be anonymous through adding these coin mixers and everything else that's illegal.
Yeah, I wouldn't use coin mixers myself personally.
And do you think that do you think that cryptocurrency should be used for illegal activities like selling child abuse images and stuff like that?
No, of course not. I mean, I guess it depends on what kind of illegal activity you're talking about. I don't think all laws are justified, but I certainly think that child pornography, trafficking of humans, those kind of nefarious activities are justifiably illegal, and that no form of money should be used for that kind of stuff. Certainly.
And do you not think that that's what BCH is advocating for?
I don't think that Bitcoin Cash people are advocating for that. No.
So why would you think they're not?
Point to me where someone said that you should be able to sell child porn.
Well, it's just if you can do illegal activity like selling drugs, then you can also do other illegal activities, which includes child abuse imagery.
Yeah, okay. So this is an interesting debate to be had, I guess, about because would you acknowledge that not all laws are good? Like there are bad laws, like very bad laws.
Well, it depends which country you're in and who made them. I mean, I'm from the UK, and law in the UK is based on what is reasonable and fair. So
do you think there's any bad laws in the UK?
Well, if it's unreasonable, then if there's an unreasonable law, then yeah. But the difficulty is when you're trying to make a law. Sometimes you're trying to make a law specific when they're trying to cater for a variable I suppose, variable circumstances. So, for example, like, on a road, for example, roads have different degrees of corners, and they have different widths, and they have, going through different residential areas and stuff like that. So it's kind of but it's not practical to just simply change the speed limit of a road every 100 meters or so.
No, I know. Can you imagine bad laws having existed in the UK? Like, not just bad laws, like, like not having the correct ideal speed limit and just kind of tolerating like a compromise, but like some horrible law that like was actively harming people. A law that like is on the moral equivalent of like some kind of nefarious crime.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, that almost sounds like a crime.
That's what I mean. No, I agree. I think a lot of laws that exist in even modern, supposedly modern countries like the UK and the United States are basically criminal laws.
Well, I mean, can you give me an example of one?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you we can start with like historical laws that have been criminal laws. So obviously, like slavery is one of them, which is only
Well, that's been
abolished
abolished.
in the United States a couple hundred years ago, and same with the UK, abolished with a lot of the work of like William Wilberforce. But like that was a historically absolutely heinous, despicable law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not even like on the moral equivalent of like something like child pornography, because you're basically enslaving, millions and millions of people.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll get that.
But what I mean is, it's possible that there are bad, horrible laws that exist, right? And so to me it's like it's an interesting question of like the degree to which compliance is a good thing. I absolutely agree that building something that facilitates really bad crimes is an awful thing, and you should not actively promote that. But I also think that there is a danger in being too compliant to where you actually end up building a system that complies with really bad laws that should actually not exist. So I reject this idea that seems to be prominent in BSV, that like law is necessarily this great thing. I think that law can be a good thing, but I also think that law can and has historically been used for very, very awful things. I mean, a lot of our look at the World War I, World War II were legal acts by governments to go in and murder people at an industrial scale. So those were bad things. So I don't necessarily think that law is always this great thing that we must necessarily respect. I think.
Yeah, but what's this got to do with cryptocurrency?
Well, law has to. We're talking about law, aren't we? You're talking about how BCH wants to facilitate illegal activities. And what I'm saying is that, well, there's a difference between bad illegal activities and illegal activities that shouldn't be illegal.
Yeah, so what's that got to do with cryptocurrency?
Well, you brought it up. You mentioned law. You said that BCH wants to. Why don't you tell me? Because you said that BCH is bad because it wants to facilitate illegal activities.
Well, yeah.
But again, there's a difference between good illegal activities and bad illegal activities. So saying that it's bad because it wants to facilitate illegal activities is not necessarily a convincing argument to me.
But I mean, if something is morally and ethically wrong, then it's up to the people of the country to enforce change, of which they can do through a general election, and change the politicians who can then enforce what the people want. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with cryptocurrency.
I don't think that actually happens politically. Typically, I think that.
But that's the idea behind it. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that's the idea behind it, but I don't think in practice that's necessarily what happens. I think more often than not, politicians like when something bad is illegal, for example, something that shouldn't be illegal is illegal, or something that shouldn't be a law is a law. Politicians will respond after a period of time during which those people are breaking those laws. So slavery is actually a really good example, because historically, like, one of the things that helped end slavery was the Underground Railroads and people actually fleeing slavery. And when they would cross those borders into the North and share their stories, and the Northerners had to now deal with issues like fugitive slave laws, and they had to decide between enforcing a fugitive slave law and sending a slave back to slavery because that was legal, or breaking that law, and they were actually looking that person in the face, they chose not to enforce that law a lot of times. And once that became a cultural thing where the people now decided, okay, we've been breaking this law because we know it's a bad law. We've been defying this law. Now let's actually work towards actually changing it. And I think social change often happens that way. I don't think this ideal that people decide, okay, there's a bad law. Let's just all go to the voting booths. Let's just go now vote and be all merry and have a nice circle jerk, and we'll get rid of this law is a very accurate take on what practically actually happens.
So what do you think BCH are trying to achieve by making themselves, making these illegal activities possible?
Yeah. So I don't think that they're trying to facilitate child porn, but I actually think that will be a practical, that could actually be in practice what could happen. So there's a difference, and so there's a difference between what they're intending to do and what could actually happen. Now, obviously, you want to judge it on what could actually happen, but I also think you need to recognize that I don't see anybody in Bitcoin Cash who supports child pornography or who supports theft or who supports, heinous property right violations or anything like that.
But effectively, indirectly, that's what they're doing.
Indirectly, that could happen, and so that's a different thing, though. So if that were the practical result, then
well, they should know that. I mean, we've just agreed that it should be obvious to them. So look, if you want to do these illegal activities, this is what's going to happen, and if you don't realize that, you're stupid.
Yeah, and so the reason I brought up the bad laws, good laws thing is that now that's an interesting question, because if the government has the power to enforce, to take down bad laws, for example, or to enforce criminal like really bad criminal acts on the blockchain, it could also, in theory, be true that the government would have power to enforce things that shouldn't be criminal, or power to actually take more control over the blockchain. That's where I think their heads are at. I don't think that they're actually trying to enforce criminal acts. I think what they're saying is that if you have the power to stop some of this stuff, you also have the power to stop legitimate trade, and you have the power to stop legitimately good activities.
But why would you?
Well, the government does that all the time. What are you talking about?
What do you mean? Why would they stop good, legitimate trade?
The government does that all the time.
Yeah, but why?
Power. I mean, corruption.
Yeah, but of course. What kind of trade are you talking about that's good that the government are trying to stop?
Okay, so tariffing is one example.
The what?
Where the government basically stops particular industries from being competitive. That would be one example. That's a huge problem.
Like what industry?
Oh, I mean, there's plenty of industries that have tariffs right now, at least in the United States. I'm not familiar with
British
law, but
just one.
Steel would be one.
And
cars, automobile tariffs. They tariff the automakers in Japan, for example, and China to try to
but you're talking about import-export tariffs.
Well, yeah, I mean, but there's also all sorts of other.
But that's protecting the domestic economies because.
No, it's not.
That's the intention behind it, surely.
Well, I'm saying, but the intention. We just talked about how the intention doesn't matter, right? We just said that the intention in Bitcoin Cash doesn't matter. If the outcome ends up being, for example, that they are facilitating large amounts of human trafficking and child porn, then I wouldn't care that their intention was noble.
Well, yeah, that's what's going to happen, and the government would just simply take it down if that's what it's being used for.
Really? Why? Why would the government simply take it down if that's what it's being used for? And so if the government would take
because
it down,
the government are so as long as they're a democratically elected government, they are meant to fulfill. Not. No, but I was saying, if they are a democratically elected government, they're meant to fulfill the will of the people. And if the will of the people do not want child porn to be traded, they will step in and shut it down.
Oh, I'm talking about we're talking about. I know that, but we're talking about like bad other like we're talking about what if the will of the people decides that they want all sorts of other bad things like these tariffs and stuff like that, or some other kind of law that restricts legitimate trade. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, we're in agreement that child porn is a horrible thing. I mean, come on, of course we are. I'm talking about how governments historically have restricted legitimate market activity. With maybe they have good intentions, but
because the intention will be to protect the domestic economy.
Yeah, but that doesn't actually happen in practice. What ends up happening in practice is that people pay a lot more money. So for example, like I was in Ecuador a couple of years ago, and automobiles, under the guise of protect, like there's, if you go to Ecuador, there are signs everywhere that says Primero Ecuador. That means Ecuador first.
Yeah.
And they are trying to protect the domestic Ecuadorian economy. So another way they enforce this is with debit card transactions. When you're in Ecuador and you go overseas and you buy something, you still pay sales tax in Ecuador. Even though you bought something from the UK, for example, you still actually pay sales tax. And all of this is under the justification that they want to protect the domestic economy. The problem is that cars there for a new car costs like $120,000 for like a, you know, entry level car.
Yeah.
A very baseline level car will cost you almost 6 figures. So when you go to Ecuador, what you end up seeing is that everyone's driving these really junky, broken down cars from, 1990s or something like that. What I mean is that's restricting legitimate trade under the intention of protecting the domestic economy.
Well, it's just stupidity.
Okay, so this was again. So this was voted on democratically. This is stupidity. It was a democratically elected government doing this stuff. So what I mean is that's a legitimate threat. If the government has the power to touch the blockchain at all and to interact with the blockchain at all, that could, in theory, be a legitimate problem. I'm not saying it is.
But the government won't. The government could shut it down if it was illegal. But the fact is, they don't have control over it because it's decentralized.
How could they shut it down if it was illegal but not legal? Because one of the things that's said in BSV commonly, is that the government could basically force miners to push through like an invalid transaction or a transaction that would have been considered invalid but is now valid because the miners are pushing it through, to basically like seize funds, for example.
In terms of shutting something down completely, like, you know, the US government was able to shut down Liberty Reserve, and that was sort of like more
because they're being anonymous and they're being stupid, right?
Yeah, so they could easily do the same with Bitcoin and the blockchain, but the only reason they wouldn't is if they don't have a reason to.
Yeah, so I get that idea. I think that that's one of the reasons I think that BSB is being smart, and that they are trying to position themselves as not hostile to the interests of government. Because the moment you position yourself
trying
as
to make themselves useful,
government, they're going to try to start shutting you down.
Yeah. So
but we've already acknowledged that governments do very stupid things under the idea that it's in their best interest to do it. So that's what I mean. So government could, like, when passing these ridiculous, outrageous laws historically, and they have a pattern of doing this over and over and over and over again, the idea that they're going to restrict themselves specifically to nefarious crimes like child pornography, like human trafficking, like selling fentanyl, or something like that. The idea that they're just going to limit themselves to that, I think, is a naive view of how the state actually operates in practice.
But let's going back to your Ecuadorian example. When you're saying that the government had this idea with these the steel tariffs, the people voted for it. So then the people are happy with it. So if the people are happy being stupid, then
no, I don't think the people are happy with it. I think that they thought that
but they could change it if they voted against it.
In theory, but that's not that's a very difficult process to change law. Law tends to react very slowly to
not a tariff can be a tariff could be lifted immediately. I mean, but then we're not talking about democratically elected government. If something like that is hard to change and the will of the people is not adhered to, that's a different kettle of fish.
I don't think democracies listen to the will of the people. I think that's
but they're meant to.
Again, that doesn't matter though. What they're meant to,
because they vote.
We've already established that what is meant is not necessarily what matters. That's a necessary but not a sufficient way to conclude about what is good and what is bad. So, like, if what was intended would BTC, for example, for making anonymous coins, was to help fugitive people from North Korea escape North Korea, that would be like a noble intention. But if what ended up in practice happening was to facilitate child pornography and human trafficking, then you would judge it by that.
Well, yeah. So it's kind of like it's good idea, but try again.
Yeah, so what I mean is that I don't believe that democracy reflects the will of the people necessarily, just because it intends to do so.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's why that's why voting systems happen on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, that worldview is kind of foreign to me. The idea that that voting is the best way to facilitate social change. I just.
Well, yeah, but it's the best way to facilitate democratic change.
Oh, well, democratic change, yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no other way, really.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, voting. I think that voting tends to follow a long period of law breaking.
Yeah. Well,
No, I'm serious. I know. I'm not saying that breaking laws is necessarily good, but I don't think that following laws is necessarily good. I think that law ultimately is derived, like the justification for law comes from natural right. It comes from an understanding of what our intrinsic rights are as rational human beings on this earth. And if a law violates that, we have no obligation to follow it. And I think that a lot of times when laws do violate that, the law only changes after a period of people violating that. So, go look at like Rosa Parks, for example, in the United States. She was considered, persona non grata, not allowed to go sit on a bus next to white people because the law said that black people and white people had to be segregated, right? So one of the ways that showed that people saw the absurdity of that law was by her breaking it and making a public display of it. That's a noble, good act. So I would caution people in BSV from being so pro-law that they miss that sometimes the way you make social changes is by facilitating the breaking of a bad law.
But I mean, BSV isn't really into laws and stuff. BSV is a medium of exchange that facilitates trade, and facilitating trade just has to act within the financial services law, which is effectively applying a set of rules so that people understand the rules of the game, so that there aren't any mistakes made in trade and there aren't any disagreements. It's meant to facilitate trade in the smoothest way possible, so that both parties understand what they're engaged in. That's the idea behind it.
So I think that.
It's got nothing to do with criminal enterprise.
I think some of the laws are good and some of the laws are bad. Like the financial services laws, I don't think all of them are necessarily good, or even just like broader laws about.
Yeah, but the idea behind financial services law is to establish the rules of the game so that trade can be conducted more efficiently. That's the idea behind it.
Well, the idea behind it is different than the practice, right? Again, the practical results.
Well, it's always changing to try and improve. I mean, nothing's situations change and everything like that. Cryptocurrencies change. Market constantly changes, but that's why you have to keep up with things. Law is law. It's not religion. Religion can't change, because if religion changes, it delegitimizes it. It delegitimizes a story. Whereas law is different. Law can be changed to adapt to changes in society.
Yeah, so I disagree with that. I think that law is derived from natural right, and those rights don't change. So
derived from natural right? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from our fundamental requirements for our survival as rational human beings. So as human beings, for example, property rights, for example, are a necessity for our own survival. The ability as rational human beings to use
property rights are good for facilitating trade and creating economic prosperity and wealth.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think that that's the primary reason we have property rights. I believe the primary reason we have property rights is because we have property is basically an extension of our human body. As human beings, you basically need property to survive. You can't survive without it.
Well, you need shelter.
Well, you need food and shelter, and you need the ability to keep the things that you create. If you don't have that, you're not able to survive.
Well, yeah, but you can defend yourself. Back in the day, before laws were made. But like I said, laws were made for economic prosperity and wealth. So when they were finding, oh right, well actually it benefits one and everybody in order to have their property protected by a larger force, so that there's nobody like trying to steal from each other and people have to work with each other, then they're like, oh well actually that makes sense, so we'll enforce that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't disagree with that. I mean, at all. I think that that's the original intent of law, but I think that that's precisely right. But I think that most laws today have nothing to do with protecting property and life.
Yeah, but I mean, how's that related to Bitcoin Cash?
Oh well, again, we're just coming back to, because you claimed that the people in Bitcoin Cash want to facilitate crime, and
well, indirectly, yeah.
I said specifically, well, it's important to understand. Well, no, not even indirectly necessarily. I mean, some of them want to directly facilitate crime, but the question becomes, well, what are we really talking about with crime? Because if we're talking about child pornography, I don't think that they want to do that. Now, if that again, it becomes the indirect.
Yeah, but if they can't see that that's what's going to happen, then they are stupid.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree with that.
Well, that's what I think. Whenever I see a Bitcoin Cash mug or shirt or somebody wearing it, I think you're stupid, because what you're doing is indirectly promoting child pornography.
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
Well, you just said that's what's going to happen. If you
could happen if they continue going down that route,
which is what they are doing.
Well, again, if you're talking about, so you just said, for example, that that the way you enact social change is through everybody voting and deciding it. Basically, it's social consensus is so. Again, the decisions that are made in Bitcoin Cash it's just social consensus. Now that can change.
But the social consensus in Bitcoin Cash seems to be promoting anonymous illegal transactions, so they can smoke crack in their own homes.
Want to convince them if you think that's such a problem, ignoring them is probably not that smart. A better thing to do would be to try to convince them otherwise.
Well, I think the better thing is actually just to promote BSV, because like being a medium of exchange is competitive by nature, and it's the one that will win is the one that's the most useful, and the one that's most useful is the one that most people use, and therefore eventually all the others will fade out. So Bitcoin Cash will eventually be phased out, because even criminals won't want to use it, because by using it they're going to be identifying themselves as criminals. And if they're smart, they don't want to be identified as criminals, so therefore BCH is going to go to zero. And good riddance.
Did you see what I posted on Twitter the other day? I said, like, an outlaw criminal is not even useful to outlaws.
Oh, good quote.
Yeah, it's from Mike Hearn back in like 2010 or something like that. Like, a lot of the stuff that Craig says was being said by Mike Hearn back in like 2010, 2011. I agree with that. I don't believe that you should actively try to facilitate crime, but I'm just not sympathetic with the idea that everything legal is good, or that there are not legitimate reasons to break laws, and that cryptocurrency could be used as a tool to make us more free by allowing legitimate trade as opposed to necessarily trade that was outlawed by the government to go through.
But I would say that it's accountability, not anonymity, that keeps us safe. So if you're accountable, if everybody is accountable to someone, there is nothing that anyone can do that nobody else would know about, which keeps everybody safe.
People, who support anonymity, like true anonymity, not just not privacy, because those things get blended together, but people who really understand the difference and who still support anonymity. Because a lot of times what people are doing is they're actually not using the term correctly. They mean privacy, but they're thinking anonymity. This is why, like in the early days of Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin.org website said anonymous on it.
Say that again. The what?
The original Bitcoin.org, created by Satoshi Nakamoto, said the word anonymous on it.
Really?
Yep.
That surprises me. Could you show me that, or do you have?
Yeah, well, you got to go to the Wayback Archive and go to the earliest days, and you'll see, like in 2009 and 2010, for a brief period of time, it said fast, like anonymous transactions or something like that. Now that changed.
Good.
That changed for a couple reasons. So if you go read the discussions between Satoshi and some of the early people involved in Bitcoin, they sort of said, well, it's not technically anonymous. It's actually pseudonymous. It's actually just private. And then they went on to talk about how Satoshi actually said, oh, well, I don't even want to lead with that word. Like, I'm not trying to say that that Bitcoin is anonymous, or that it counteracts or that it is hostile to the government or something like that. He said, he specifically said, I'm not trying to say that. So he said, I don't want to lead with an anonymity. But yeah, so if you go to the Bitcoin.org archive, and maybe I'll share it on Twitter later, it did say anonymous. So when I think a lot of people who are using that term say anonymous, I think what they actually mean is private. But it's back to the original point. The people who think that who actually know the difference and who use that term and say we actually want anonymity, I would ask them, if you're a business person, who the hell wants to trade with someone who is truly anonymous, where you have no accountability?
Yeah.
That's like an idiotic deal to get involved in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't trade with someone who's anonymous. I want to have at least some kind of recourse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a terrible way to build a medium of exchange because you are incentivizing criminal behavior. You're also making people less trustworthy, and a market is about people trusting each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
The enemy of everybody else when you make it so transactions can't be. You have no recourse whatsoever. You can't even say, okay, I traded with John. Now, I don't necessarily know who John is, but I know that this is a guy. I'm going to put out the warning that you don't want to trade with anybody using this specific credential. Like, that's an important distinction between privacy and anonymity. And I think that this was understood in the early days of Bitcoin. So, like, if you go back and read, like, Hal Finney, for example, who was, like, held up as the ideal crypto anarchist. Well, you read him, he actually argued for traceability. In 1993 or 1994, Hal Finney said that he thinks that making money that is not traceable could actually empower bad states and could empower criminals because it would allow people to rob you at gunpoint and then run away, and you have no ability to track them. So, but all I mean when I'm talking about this law thing, because I know like it maybe piss off some people who are listening. What I'm trying to say is that like there are legitimate fears though about traceability, I think too. So while I think that traceability and accountability and bringing light to the system, all of that's awesome, like there are ways in which the ability to surveil transactions can be used for nefarious purposes by governments and by even non-state actors. So there is a line to be towed, and whether or not I always wonder whether or not the original Bitcoin vision successfully toes that line between privacy and anonymity, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I think it does a better job than everything else, because I certainly think that being truly anonymous is stupid.
Well, yeah, I mean, Satoshi was only human like the rest of us, and so he was probably realizing things as he went along as well, and learning quickly. I mean, but there's always there's always improvements that can be made, and if you realize that you've used a slightly wrong word to describe something and somebody corrects you, then you can change it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear he realized that, but I think it's funny sometimes. I don't think people in BSV, a lot of people have actually dived deep into the history of Bitcoin. I think sometimes there's a tendency to focus on what you're hearing from Craig, which I'm not saying whether he's Satoshi or not, but like I think that there's a tendency to do that, and you got to look back at what Satoshi was saying too, and put it in context. And Satoshi definitely was on this journey himself of discovering the difference between the words and the significance of that.
So, but going back to BCH and these guys wanting it to be anonymous, do you think that's where it stems from, those first words when he used that word anonymous?
I think some of that comes from a misunderstanding of the word, because I oftentimes see people saying, "Oh, the distinction doesn't matter. That's just semantics," but it's not. I don't think it's semantics. I think it does matter. But I also think that there is I think that it stems from a fear, and I think it's a legitimate one, but I don't think that they're necessarily taking into account the implications of everything that they're doing. I think it stems from a fear of governments behaving badly with the power to trace and surveil.
True, but the last thing you want to do is give a government, the tool to actually to carry out things anonymously, because they're the ones who will use it.
Yep, you're absolutely right. This is why you see North Korea supposedly using Monero, for example. I think that it's a naive view that if you create a technology that facilitates criminal behavior, if you actually don't trust the government and I don't really trust the government that much. If you don't trust the government, then I think the worst thing you can do is build a technology that allows them to be more nefarious than evil.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, like, these governments, of course, they would benefit from anonymous transactions themselves. You know, I mean, it's great for them. It may also allow people to do. It may allow people who are good people to also do things that are important. So someone in a very, very authoritarian country may now have some ability to get money in and out of the country in a way that is secretive, and that actually may help them. But you got to understand that when you're doing that, you're also making the trade-off by empowering these states, and I'm not sure the trade-off is always worth it. I tend to think, and my mindset has changed a lot on this, but now I tend to think that more openness will actually lead to better results for everybody down the road.
Oh yeah, I would say that also if you build a system and you build in anonymity, anonymity is what centralizes it, because whoever added that in anonymity is no longer accountable to anybody else within it. So therefore, they completely control it.
Yeah, there's an interesting debate about, and I think it's probably accurate. Like, I think that being too anonymous, like on the chain, can create a problem where you can no longer audit the chain and no longer see what's actually happening, and you may actually facilitate things like inflation and other things.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the system is completely anonymous, you can't see if the creator is just simply making more coins for himself.
Yeah, no, I agree. But all I wanted to do was just basically say, like, I'm sympathetic to the idea. I think that BSV people are too harsh on people in Bitcoin Cash specifically, and I think that money is about having friends, and money is about having people want to.
Yeah, but why would you want a friend that's indirectly facilitating and advocating for child abuse imagery?
Well, you would want to convince him. You would want to show him the errors of his ways, but the way to do it is strategically, is not necessarily to say you're a child pornographer, that's what you want. The way to do it is to show him how what he actually wants is probably more practical with your way. So, like, you know, the people who are convinced that anonymity is a tool for freedom, the best way to convince them would be to prove to them that openness and auditability and light are the best tools for freedom.
But what if they're too closed-minded and too intellectually challenged to understand that?
It depends on who it is, I suppose. I don't necessarily think that's the case. Roger's not closed-minded at all, and Roger's not a stupid person at all, and it's totally
how come he's doing such stupid things then at the moment?
What's he doing that's stupid?
Adding coin mixes.
Oh, well, again, we're talking about, I understand what his motivation is.
What is it?
Well, I just said, I think his motivation is to facilitate more honest transacting. I actually think that's his motivation.
But you can't have honest transactions through anonymity.
No, but I think hey, we can either we got to distinguish between intent and outcome. I'm saying that that's what I think the intent is. I'm not saying that that's what I think the outcome is going to be. I'm saying that that's what I think the intent is. I don't think the intent is to facilitate awful crimes. I do not think, I absolutely would 1000% unequivocally reject the idea that Roger wants to facilitate the violation of property rights, the violation of life, the violation of human dignity or anything by with coin mixers or something like that. I don't think that's what his perspective is at all. I think that he's coming at it from the perspective of, hey, historically governments have done a lot of horrible things. The governments have done mass gulags in Soviet Russia. They've done the Holocaust. They've murdered hundreds of millions of people in the name of state security or in the name of state prosperity. And that's a really dangerous, awful thing that can happen again. And we need to be very, very careful about that. And we need to have tools to resist that. I'm totally sympathetic to that idea. I just think
but what he's creating is a stupid idea, because what he's creating is giving the government the abilities to do more of what you've just said.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. That could actually be the case.
Well, how come he can't see that then? I mean, that's intellectually challenged.
I don't know. I mean, I tend to think that people who disagree with me are not, or who don't see eye to eye with me, are not necessarily stupid. I don't know. I mean,
Well, how can he not see that what he's doing is going to enable governments to do more of what he doesn't want them to do, and indirectly lead to the facilitation of child abuse imagery?
Well, then you should. I mean, I don't know. Maybe ask him. Ask him to come on your show. He's pretty open about coming on.
I already have. He refused.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean,
Because I would grill him.
You know, it would probably help if he wasn't being sued constantly by people in BSV. But you know.
Well, he needs to be stopped somehow.
I don't think that suing him is a legitimate way to stop him.
But he should stop himself anyway. Like you say, look, Roger, what you're doing is building a system that governments could use for nefarious activities, and also, by the way, indirectly, it facilitates child abuse imagery. Stop it, please. And his answer would be no.
I don't think that would be. If he did answer no, I don't think it would be that simple of an answer. I think he would. I don't know. I mean, I'm not Roger. You know, it's not my job to say what he.
Yeah, but by wearing a Bitcoin Cash shirt, you're supporting him.
No, I'm not. That's ridiculous.
Yes, you are. That's what Bitcoin Cash is.
Wearing. Hey. So first off, like that's come on. I'm not.
I'm having a dig.
I don't support child pornography. So saying that I do because I wear a freaking T-shirt about Bitcoin Cash, not about child porn. Look, the original vision of Bitcoin Cash was very simple. It was about creating fast, reliable, scalable digital cash for the world. There was not going to be any of this bullshit about censoring transactions and telling people that they can't use the chain for data, they can't do this, they can't do that, that we're going to add Avalanche and all this other garbage. None of that was part of the original vision.
But it is now.
It's part of the original vision for some people, but there are a lot of people in Bitcoin Cash who still disagree with that and who don't want that to be the case. And
surely they should come over to BSV then.
I think a lot of them are still holding their BSV. And like I've said, I had much more BSV than I have Bitcoin Cash now. So, but the issue is, can people be persuaded? And how is the best way to persuade them? I don't think the best way to persuade them is the path that most people in BSV has taken, but they're free to do what they want.
Well, there's lots of different ways. I mean, one of the, I think suing Roger is one way to maybe hit him over the head so that he wakes up from his
No, it clearly hasn't worked. It's clearly failed. Suing him is like the last. Suing him is basically a big red sign that says, "Don't do business with us ever again, because we may get pissed off and sue you again."
I would say it's setting the example. It's kind of like, if you do what Roger is going to do and build a system that indirectly facilitates child pornography, you will get sued. So don't do it.
That's
it's
not
a deterrent.
Why they're suing him, though.
Why are they suing him then?
I don't know. This is like 100% specifics. I know it has nothing to do with that. I mean, I think it was suing over allegedly cheating in the hash war, which I think is silly because I don't think you can cheat in the hash war.
Oh, but you already admitted that they did. Yeah, because you said you didn't see it coming. You were just like, well, Nakamoto consensus just simply follows the economic model. But instead,
I don't think that Nakamoto consensus applies to minority chains.
But it wouldn't have been the minority chain.
No, well, yeah, it would have been. BTC is the majority chain.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, Nakamoto consensus between BCH and BCH is BSV and BCH.
I don't think you can have Nakamoto consensus between minority chains.
Well, that's what would have happened, because that's what solves any issues.
No, I don't think that's Nakamoto. I don't think that's like. There's a reason why Satoshi said there's only one global chain. So if you go read Satoshi's writings, I think it's like absolutely clear that he only ever intended there to be one blockchain.
Oh, yeah, there will only be one blockchain. The
consensus model is dependent on there being one blockchain, and the Nakamoto consensus doesn't exactly work as well when you have minority chains duking it out. It's not the same thing. I also don't think. How did they cheat? Okay, so checkpointing
colluded with the exchanges to steal the ticker symbol. That was it.
The exchanges are free to. The exchanges are part of the Bitcoin market. They're free to. They don't need to follow the miners. There's no reason they're like obligated. The exchanges are not. The exchanges are not miners. The exchanges.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they stole the ticker. That was it.
How'd they steal the ticker?
By listing it on their exchanges and agreeing all together that they were going to keep the ticker BCH on that chain.
Yeah, I guess I don't see that that's like illegal at all.
It's completely immoral.
How is it immoral?
Because you're meant to surely let the miners decide for themselves, whereas it was the exchanges that decided.
No, the exchanges are a business. They're not obligated to honor anything the miners want to do. They don't need to do business with the miners. They do business. It's two parties. The exchanges are agreeing to sell whatever coins the miners give them, and if the exchanges decide, hey, we're not going to sell that coin with this ticker, I mean, that's fine. I would be actually perfectly okay if tomorrow, if all the exchanges decided to label BTC, if the exchanges tomorrow, without even helping the miners, the exchanges said tomorrow, I'm going to label BTC shitcoin or SegWit coin, and Coinbase did that tomorrow, I would be perfectly fine with that, even though that's technically not valid according to Nakamoto consensus.
Yeah, but so long as people kept their value, that would be fine. Whereas in terms of the first split between BCH and BTC, the value went with the ticker. That's the issue.
Anyone who had BCH got an equivalent number of BSV.
Yeah, but it wasn't given out at the same value.
Well, you still had your BCH.
Yeah, you still had your BTC and BCH. Yep, that's true. So if you were holding BTC, then you actually benefited from it.
BCH, like the dollar amount, you still have the same amount, don't you?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, so if you were in early, but what I'm saying is for the new people getting in, now they're just like, right, well, do we choose BTC, BCH, or BSV? Because they're getting in now rather than later.
After the fork, but they're not. There's no after the fork. There's no there's nothing legal about why would that matter after the fork?
It matters because BTC, with it not being used as a medium of exchange and being absolutely useless, it is very soon going to be worthless. And it's the same with BCH going anonymous. It is just simply not going to be used by global trade. So therefore, that will also go to zero. But all those people in those camps, the people in the BTC are telling people, yeah, you should buy BTC. People in BCH are saying, you should buy BCH. And by doing that, they are misguiding and misleading these people because they're investing their money in something that's going to go to zero.
Yeah, I mean, that same argument was made by BTC people when BCH first forked. It was like they were reporting BCH people to the SEC. They were threatening lawsuits. I mean, I was threatened to be sued several times over misrepresenting Bitcoin and saying that BCH was the real Bitcoin. And, all sorts of harassment happened, and that exact same argument was made.
TK was saying that you boys have endured quite a bit.
Well, yeah, both from the BCH camp recently, but even before that from BTC. I mean, I had serious threats.
Oh, really? What you've had issues with the guys in BCH?
Well, yeah, in BCH because I said a couple things nice about BSV, and now I'm no longer considered part of BCH.
Oof, harsh.
And just people just generally acting like dicks.
That's because they're stupid.
I agree.
And that's why they support BCH and BTC.
Well, I think being a dick to somebody because they disagree with you on a coin is pretty dumb. I think if you're selfish and you're self-interested and you're pursuing well, how can I get the best investment? You would actually want to listen to people who maybe disagree with you and at least hear their side before you say they're an asshole or something like that.
Oh yeah, totally. But I mean, the reason I have no patience for anybody in BCH is because I can see that what they're doing is going to indirectly facilitate the trading of child abuse imagery, and I cannot stand for that at all.
So what do you think? What do you think you should do about it?
They need to be told that what they're doing is stupid, and they need to be made to stop immediately.
Okay, I mean,
And people should stop wearing BCH merchandise.
Again, so BCH is just social consensus. Right? It's just like the plan for BCH, the scaling plan right now, the plan whatever that they have, that was not necessarily the original plan. That changed, right? So that doesn't mean that like
They shouldn't call themselves Bitcoin if they don't follow the white paper anymore.
wearing a BCH shirt is not necessarily an endorsement of the current plan for BCH.
It is.
No, it's not.
Well, that's what it looks like.
No, it's not. No, that's crap. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that's what it looks
reality is
like.
that
Surely you can see that that's what it looks like from the outside.
no, I can't. I think I don't think most people think that. I think that's an irrational view. I think that's.
Well, you don't think that wearing a BCH shirt supports BCH?
I don't think that it necessarily supports the current model. I think there are people within BCH, and there's a lot of debates happening, and the people disagree about things, and so.
But that's what if you wear that shirt at this particular moment in time, then you are supporting it as it currently is.
Okay, so can you not fly a British flag because the British government did something bad at one point in time? Therefore, it's an endorsement of everything bad about Britain, or everything good. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but it's all about timing. You know,
So if Britain does something bad tomorrow that you disagree with, will you like if you had a flag up, would you completely take it down and just say I'm never going to have it up until they retract it?
Well, I would say it would be inappropriate to fly at that time.
At that specific moment.
Yeah.
But the next day? I mean, the point is like would you never fly it again until they actually changed something?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that's so again, like the question becomes, well, how do you get things to change? The way you get things to change is by
pointing out that they're being stupid.
And that's what I've done. That's why I get so much hate. I mean, do you follow me on Twitter? I mean, I think you do. I have criticized Bitcoin Cash basically endlessly and called a paid Calvin-Air actor over and over and over again.
That's harsh.
I've said that I think that most of the stuff that's happening right now is not very smart and that it's not going to end well.
So what? But the thing is, why would you be by wearing a BCH shirt? What you're doing is effectively encouraging them.
No, it's not. It's saying get back to the original vision.
Which is BSV.
Thing. That was a joke and a troll at people who constantly say that I'm on one side or the other.
Yeah, but you know what they say about sarcasm. You know, lowest form of wit, highest form of intelligence, and the people in BCH are not very intelligent.
I mean, you know, that's the whole reason I had a mug. I mean, this is such a silly conversation. I can't believe I'm even having it right now. I had a T-shirt on with the Bitcoin Cash thing, and I had a Bitcoin SV mug that was deliberately trolling the people who are saying I'm paid by both sides.
Gotcha. Oh, well, you know, I mean, it takes intelligence to understand these things. I was a little bit slow off the mark.
Well, I don't think reading into it that I endorse child porn is charitable or intelligent.
Well, indirectly, but that was my personal view.
Okay, you're fine to have your personal view, but I'm fine to say it's crazy. I mean, it's just...
but I've just justified it. So what I'm saying is if I have that point of view, I'm sure that other people do as well.
I don't think anybody else has that point of view.
Oh, well, we'll have to take a democratic vote on that.
Yeah, we can do a poll on that.
Yeah.
I don't think that you and I disagree with a lot of stuff. I think for some reason, like based on your conversation with TK, I got this impression that you seem to think that I have all these views that I don't.
Maybe it's Steve. I don't know. But I mean,
well, I mean, you know, we're all friends. We all have, you know, each one of us doesn't we don't agree 100% on everything. But you know, Steve's someone whose opinion I very much value. I mean, Steve is sort of like this is called the Bitcoin Original Gangsters podcast, where if you're talking about Bitcoin Original Gangsters, Steve is one of them. And he wrote.
Does he support the original vision?
Oh yeah, of course. If you go read have you read his book?
I've not.
His book is excellent. It's called "What's the Big Deal About Bitcoin?" And I think everything you read in there totally lines up with the original vision of Bitcoin. He wrote that in 2013 or 2014. And that book I've seen given out at student conferences around the world in several different countries to tens of thousands of students now, probably.
So how come it's taken him such a long time to come across to the original vision?
I don't think that's like a relevant question how long it's taken. And I don't even think it matters that someone agrees with you on the original vision. I think it matters that someone sees it in their best interest to side with you. They don't necessarily need to agree with you. I mean, the idea that everyone's going to agree on Bitcoin at a global scale is silly. Nobody agrees on money right now. I don't think people are always going to agree on what Bitcoin should be. I think that when Bitcoin grows, if whatever fork of Bitcoin becomes the dominant fork, there are always going to be political actors and pundits and news people and economists who are calling for raising the block size, or no, sorry, not raising the block size, for raising the inflation or changing this or changing that. That's all stupid. The idea is to get it out of government control or get it out of anyone's control. But what I mean is, like, I don't think that ultimately that's what matters. I think those people are going to be irrelevant. So I don't care whether me and Steve agree 100% on something. What I care about is, do we have mutual interest in Bitcoin succeeding? And of course, the answer is yes. So I guess, like, why do you feel that people need to agree on something?
Because if they don't agree, for example, that child pornography is a bad thing, it can have dire consequences in the future, and it can really damage people.
I don't think that Steve thinks child pornography is a good thing.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is he needs to understand that the system that he is supporting in terms of BCH is currently indirectly, encouraging that.
Maybe you should have him on the show and
Great, get him on. More than happy to.
I'm sure he would come. He's a very friendly guy.
Excellent.
I mean, did you listen to the last episode? Steve already said that he thinks Bitcoin SV is very exciting and quite a bit more exciting than Bitcoin Cash right now.
Well, exactly, yeah. So, I heard him say he thinks that, but he needs to be more sort of like TK Coleman, where it's just like, look, there is no other coin that makes any sense whatsoever. There is only Bitcoin.
Why does it need to be like that?
Because it's a medium of exchange that facilitates trade.
That, but yeah, sure, but I just said, like, in a global Bitcoin economy, you're not going to have necessarily everyone agreeing on exactly what Bitcoin should be.
Well, it will only be one thing, and people will just simply be using Bitcoin. There won't be any other coins in the future. It will just be Bitcoin, and that's it.
Well, that's what I mean. I think that if that were, regardless, people are still going to want to change it.
Well, there's a difference between improving and changing.
Well, some people might still want to change it for the worse.
Well, that's not improving, is it?
Well, that doesn't mean I know, but I said change. I didn't say improve. I said that people might want to change it for the worse. I just mean that I don't think that people need to agree.
Changing something for the worse is a bad idea.
Yes, but bad ideas can succeed.
And
as far as
not for long. Not for long.
Not for long, no. But they can succeed in the short term and screw everything up.
Well, yeah, but it just drags out the process and makes the pain last a little bit longer.
I'm just saying that, like, in a market economy, the whole point of a market is that you don't need to agree on everything.
In a market
economy, don't agree in a market. There's all sorts of preferences that happen in a marketplace. I don't want to have to worry about everybody having philosophical agreement with everybody on everything. I think that it's more important that we understand that it's in our best interest to behave honestly together and to trade. That's all that matters. I don't actually think that we need to be like, this is the whole great thing about a market is that Muslims and Jews can trade together and get along fine, or that, atheists and Christians and everything else can trade and not kill each other. That's awesome. But they don't agree about a lot of fundamental issues. I think that's great. I don't think you need to necessarily agree on all this stuff. I think you just need that people need to see it's in their financial best interest. And I think whatever chain of Bitcoin succeeds will succeed not by making a philosophical argument to the masses. I think they're going to succeed by the people seeing it's in their best interest.
Absolutely, yeah. I absolutely agree with that.
Don't worry, because Bitcoin SV, if Bitcoin SV is going to win, it's going to win on its own merit, and everything will be fine. And people like Steve or whoever else who you think have doubts, and I'm not trying to characterize what Steve's position is. He'll be able to say it better than I can, but if he has whatever doubts he has, if it succeeds, it's going to succeed, and he'll be better off for it. It's not like Steve doesn't have BSV, and he'll be better off financially, and
does he have any BCH merchandise? He needs to burn it.
maybe I'll do a video where I burn my BCH merchandise to make you happy. I don't know.
Yay, great stuff.
I have no plans to burn my Bitcoin Cash merchandise. I don't think wearing it is supported.
Just sell it while you still can. Sell it while Roger will still buy it off you.
I don't know if he'll buy my used T-shirt. No, I don't even know what the point of that is. Like, I that mindset is so foreign to me. You're free to have it. I'm not saying you're bad by any means for thinking that way. I'm just saying, like, I can't personally imagine myself thinking like that.
What, thinking like what?
That wearing a Bitcoin Cash T-shirt is some kind of an endorsement of child pornography. Like I've already said, like the Bitcoin
Oh
Cash
yeah, that.
community is-
We'll have to do a Twitter vote on that, a Twitter poll.
Oh God.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. Let's see what people think. You know, does
The hoi polloi are usually not correct anyway.
Oh, I sound as though you're making excuses already. You're sweating.
I'm preparing to lose, so I can keep my head high. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Because we've been this is kind of it's been a fun conversation actually. I would love to move on. I don't know if we're boring people. Maybe you thought we'd disagree more. I mean, I feel like we agree on a lot of stuff.
I think we agree on almost everything, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down
apart
with
from
it,
wearing
you know?
BCH merchandise.
Oh God, why do you care so much about that?
Because it's funny and I've got nothing else to nitpick at.
Well, if it's any consolation, I also had a BSV mug in the frame as well. So I don't think that therefore is any endorsement of anything. But again, hey, BCH could change. If BCH changes, that's a good thing. I don't see why that's a problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it changed and improved, that would be a good thing. But it's too late. They've left it far too late.
What would be the reason it's too late?
Because of the block halving.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I mean, I think so. Maybe we can move on to a better discussion, just so we don't keep fighting about the T-shirt. I don't know if people want to hear about that.
Yeah, well, let's go on about the block halving. Yeah, go for it.
I think that the block halving is very relevant. I think that Bitcoin Cash is not following a very rational strategy because they are trying to focus on merchant adoption when merchant adoption is never going to get you the kind of transaction volume you need to make mining profitable. Not in the short term. Long term, obviously, like merchant adoption could be very profitable and valuable, but there's no way you're going to get the kind of volume necessary without enterprise use on some kind of data usage or something like that, right? Which is why I think like Bitcoin SV makes a lot more sense in that regard, because of the inevitability of the subsidy running out, and specifically with the dynamics of being a minority chain, in particular, trying to bootstrap by saying, oh, let's get this random coffee shop here to accept Bitcoin Cash is not going to work. I mean, it's nice to
totally
use
agree.
it at more merchants. I love being able to use it at merchants, and Bitcoin Cash is more convenient to use at merchants right now. I mean, I buy domains with Bitcoin Cash on Namecheap all the time, and that's super convenient. But it's also not there's not a good investment prospect when that's when they basically killed the ability for businesses to do it at enterprise levels by refusing to scale quickly.
Yeah, and also being a medium of exchange, a business will not accept a medium of exchange in return for their goods and services on the premise of what it might do. It's absolutely ridiculous. They would never do that because what it might do represents its fundamental value. Does it or does it not? If it doesn't, it's bollocks. So therefore, scaling like BSV Bitcoin has done is absolutely fundamental to its value because they can see what it can do, not what it might be able to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think businesses make investments based on what things might do. I mean, I think that's
a risk though.
That's more risky, yeah. But investments are all risk. I mean, even now with Bitcoin,
yeah, but we're not talking about risk. We're talking about a medium of exchange that facilitates trade.
So I think that Bitcoin SV is still in a position of somewhat. It still has some risks. I mean, mining is not. It's not like the transaction volume is. They're not mining, 16 BSV and fees per block right now, right? Like the fees have not made up for the subsidy yet. They're trying to get there, but they haven't done that yet. So
yeah, but you can see what they're gunning for.
Yeah, but as a business, and I think Calvin would even acknowledge this, as a business, you're still taking on risk, especially an early mover, because you're assuming that, okay, I'm going to be one of the early actors, but it may not be the case that enough people use this in order to make this profitable in the time frame that it needs to be to work.
Oh yeah, but that's why it's a massive risk. But what other choice do we have? BTC refuses to scale, and they're not scaling the chain and they're only scaling off chain, which is never going to work. BCH is wasting their time trying to be anonymous, which again is never going to work and restricts global trade. We've only got BSV as a choice. So therefore it's kind of like, if we've only got BSV as a choice, we may as well ram it down everyone's throats and say, look, this is the only choice you have, because everything else is going to fail. And if you don't understand that, then you're stupid.
Well, yeah, that's why I've kind of tried to tell people that who criticize me in Bitcoin Cash about, you know, being too pro BSV. I tell them, well, look,
get them on the show.
Well, unfortunately, it can't be. You can't even have a debate between Bitcoin Cash and BSV unless Bitcoin Cash were scaling more quickly and trying to lock the protocol down. Like, there are fundamental things that you cannot get rid of in Bitcoin, in my opinion, that you cannot get rid of. And if you do, then there's no debate to be had. And so, yeah, like, the only one that seems friendly to business right now is BSV, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who is it that's been nasty to you in BCH? Get them on the show, and I will rip them to pieces.
Maybe I'll reach out to some people. I highly doubt they will be willing to come on the show. But
why not?
Well, again, I think a lot of people are burying their heads in the sand because they've overreacted against BSV and decided that anything that BSV does must necessarily be bad, which is not accurate.
Well, just anybody. I mean, trying to encourage Roger on the show. I mean, I actually did meet Roger at the CC Forum in London, and the first thing I said to him was, because he was like on his way through, I said, look, Roger, is BCH going anonymous? He said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, if it's going anonymous, how can there be any legal recourse in the trade when the people in the trade can't prove that they've sent the medium of exchange over to one another? Yeah, and then he didn't say anything, skedaddled off, and then after that, his personal assistant Mickey wouldn't let me anywhere near him.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what happened. I know that, like, you've kind of insulted him several times on the show, so I you know, as someone...
Yeah, but only because he's being stupid. Like, how many times has he got to be told?
Well, who wants to talk to you if you're insulting them, dude?
I'm not insulting. I'm calling him as it is. I'm calling him stupid. He needs to realise that he's being stupid.
Okay, there's a difference between acting... If you think that he's being stupid, that doesn't mean he's
but
stupid.
I know he is being stupid. He is...
No, but okay, but let's say, if you think he's being stupid, that doesn't mean he is stupid.
But yeah, stupid is as stupid does.
No, not necessarily, because you just...
Yeah.
Okay, so are you stupid because you lost all your money in a stupid investment?
Because I was stupid, yes. I was stupid and reckless.
Were you generally stupid?
At that point, that move was stupid. Just like, yeah, you're only as good as your last call.
I'm not saying that specific movement was stupid. Obviously it was. Were you generally stupid? Everything else in your life, you were just stupid. Everything. You just had no ability to be intelligent.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a right time and a right place for everything. You know, at the moment, Roger is being stupid.
Even if you disagree with him, doesn't make him stupid.
At the moment, he is being stupid. So therefore, I'm going to call him stupid. At the moment, at this very moment in time, I will call him stupid.
Then good luck getting people to come on your show, because no one wants to come on a show and be called stupid or be. Like, defining him as stupid is a way of abbreviating everything that he's doing. No, defining him as stupid is just stupid. You have a guy who has made hundreds of millions of dollars in business.
Well, just because he got lucky.
How did he get lucky? Tell me that.
Well, I'm sure he got lucky when he was in prison.
Okay, that's just stupid, dude.
I know.
How did he get lucky? Because when I look at the history of Bitcoin, I look at it as, okay, nobody thought this was going to be valuable besides a very small group of people. There are a very small group of people who saw the potential of it. And Roger Ver made a video where he said, hey, I bet like $10,000 that this is going to be worth this much money. And I'm going all in. I'm going to actually sell the Lamborghini that I own from my other business and go 100% in on Bitcoin. That is not luck. At that time, that was a very risky and scary investment. That's not luck.
I was a massive... Roger, I mean, like everyone else, I was a huge fan of Roger. I was a huge fan of Roger.
Saying he's lucky is just, come on, dude. That's not an intelligent thing to say. I don't think you're stupid. I think that's a stupid thing to say, though, because it's not luck. Most people, there were plenty of people who had the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin and hold their Bitcoin for that period of time. he was the one who was actually willing to assume that risk and who actually saw that that would be a valuable thing. Besides the fact that he was already, I guess, successful too, but that's a secondary issue. I mean, certainly he made a lot of money off Bitcoin itself.
Well, this is what makes me feel very disappointed with him, because I had the utmost respect for him to start with, and now he's being stupid.
All right, I mean, if that's what you think, I mean that is what it is. I mean,
I never used to call him stupid. I was a massive fan of his. I was all for supporting him.
If he's being stupid, he'll lose money. I mean,
that's what he's going to do. But he's going to lose everyone else a lot of money as well.
Well, that is what it is. I mean, that's literally what happens in business. People lose money. That sucks. But I mean, name me. There's plenty of other businesses that are behave stupidly and lose money, and nobody has the kind of outrage over it. The unique outrage in the Bitcoin space is kind of silly. I tend to think, hey, let people try to do what they want, and if it ends up being stupid, then they'll suffer for it, and I won't, and that sucks. But I'm not gonna lose sleep over it.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying, what's going on the in the crypto space is people calling bullshit on Ponzi schemes. People didn't want to hear that Bernie Madoff, was a criminal and he had a Ponzi scheme. People didn't want to hear that Alan Stanford, had a Ponzi scheme. People didn't want to know that Charles Ponzi had a Ponzi scheme. But eventually they were revealed, and that's what's going to happen here.
I don't think that Roger is the moral equivalent of Bernie Madoff.
At the moment, he is. Oh yeah, you're right. Well, okay, yeah. Unintentionally, he is not. But he is actually doing that, even though he doesn't realize it. He's promoting a Ponzi scheme, because what he's doing has got no fundamental value whatsoever, and he's encouraging people to buy it, and he's encouraging people to adopt it.
Well, fundamental. What do you mean by fundamental value?
Well, it's in kind of like he's adding coin mixers and creating a system where you can carry out illegal activities, which means the government is also going to shut it down, and it also means that commercial and global trade is never going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but it is a market.
Well, that's what will happen. It's going to be phased out, just like wampum was phased out with the North American Indians because gold was more useful. The same thing is going to happen here. Bitcoin Cash will go to zero because eventually less and less and less people will use it until nobody does, because nobody's going to be trading with it. Not even criminals will use it.
I think if that happened and honestly happened, I don't think that he would have a problem with that.
Well, I think a lot of other people would have a problem with it, that he's told to buy it.
It's not his responsibility. People have told people to buy all sorts of stuff. I mean, the reality is, this is a market.
I would have a problem with it if I was listening to Roger.
Let's say that BSV failed and you told people to buy it, but BSV ended up honestly failing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be complicit in that? I mean, I don't think so. Not really.
I would feel responsible in some way.
Okay, maybe you would feel a little responsible, but it doesn't make you a bad person. It means that you made a bad investment, and people they made their own choice too.
Yeah, but like I said, if that happened, I would feel wrong and very stupid.
And I'm sure that he would feel stupid too if he ended up losing a bunch of money on.
Well, that's what's going to happen.
Okay. What's the point?
Well, my point is, he's being stupid at the moment.
Okay, well, if that's what you think, all I was saying is that he's not a stupid guy.
Yeah, okay. Well, in general, he's got some intelligence there, but in this part, he's wrong. But in terms of this, why we need to get a move on at the moment is because of this block reward halving. If things carry on as what they're doing, so Roger is going down a path that is a dead end, but he just can't even see it yet. So it's a case of trying to make him see that. All those BTCs are also doing the same thing, but those resources are currently wasted because they could all be on Bitcoin, which could be moving it forward, which means that we're therefore going to have a global monetary peer-to-peer electronic cash system. They are currently making it more difficult for that to happen. And at the moment, where we're using this stupid monetary system, where the banks print the money, they therefore have to put an interest rate on it in order to give it velocity and make it circulate. And therefore, not only are the businesses dealing with interest that the banks put on it, they're also having to deal with the rate of inflation of the currency because they're printing it into infinity. So it just means that people who are actually entrepreneurs who are trying to create businesses, can go bust as soon as there's an economic bump in the road, which is horrendous because, from a business.
The banks are, it's funny is I just got to toot my own hat because everything you're saying is done democratically.
democratically.
Well, we were talking about law earlier, and you were saying how this, like, we were talking about democracy and the people's will. Well, I mean, this is all being done by democratic governments, ostensibly at least.
Yeah, but that's because they don't have a better alternative at the moment.
They do have a better alternative. They have gold.
You can't
Gold is a better alternative.
you can't trade gold digitally.
You can trade. Well, actually, you can trade.
The best you can do is tokenize gold, which is basically what fiat currency is.
Fiat currency is not tokenized gold. No, it's not.
Effectively, it is. That's what it started out as.
No, it's not.
That's what it started out as. It was a certificate. It was a certificate to claim on gold. That's what it was to start with until 1971.
Fiat currency was, yeah, the actual paper. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm just saying that the gold standard worked for a long time, and gold standard would still work better than the existing system. So they obviously do have a choice. I wouldn't let them off by saying, oh, it's not. They don't have a choice to inflate the currency. Of course they do.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. This is the issue with central banks. Central banks have complete autonomy to do what they want, which is why Bitcoin was created.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the idea that because it's legal or this is done with like a democratic government doesn't make it good.
Yeah, but currency was a way to accelerate trade, which ironically, added to economic prosperity and people's wealth. But ironically, the drawback or the downside to it was inflation.
Yeah, I mean it can be for depending on what asset you're using as the currency. Inflation could be a problem.
Well, if you're not using gold, if you're having to use a what effectively is like tokenized gold, which is what currency is, the currency does not appreciate in value like gold is.
Not tokenized gold.
No, but that's how it started out as.
Oh, well, like the current financial system, yeah. I mean, it was basically they bait and switched, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it was like 1971 where they were just like, right, well, actually, everything's now going to be pegged to the US dollar, which was bollocks,
Yeah, they were already. But that's what I mean. They had a choice. That's all I'm saying is they had a choice. You said they didn't have a choice. Of course they had a choice.
The thing is that you got to look at the position that America was in. One, they're the biggest military power in the world, and everybody was calling bullshit on the amount of money that they were printing. They were like, "We want our gold back. We want our gold back." So it was. I mean, France
gold wasn't there.
Well, exactly, it wasn't there. So they didn't have a choice because because
they made a choice to sell and get rid of the gold a long time ago. So they did have a choice. They didn't have a choice. They put themselves in a situation in which they didn't have a choice, sure, but the choices that they made led to that situation.
Well, yeah, but they were stupid choices, and they found themselves in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, and so this comes back to my point this is why I can see, I can understand why people are trying to push for certain things outside of the current legal system, because governments have a history of being really, really, really stupid. I'm not saying that that's the way to beat them.
That's why Bitcoin has been designed, But what Roger is doing is reckless and stupid.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. Ultimately, like my primary motivation, my primary investment thesis is which coin is actually trying to scale and is trying to be a real free market. And by far, Bitcoin SV is the only one trying to do that.
It is indeed the only one.
Is like. It's like not even relevant. I mean, these like stupid debates. I mean, about law. I mean, like I said, I would be willing to have a debate about law and about the necessity of legal compliance and regulatory stuff if BCH were planning to scale. Right now, they're not planning to scale. I would love for them to do that so that investors have an interesting choice. But right now, they're not doing that. So
surely the best way to tell them that is to protest against it and say, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to vote for someone else. I'm going to show my support for BSV.
I've already said I'll sell the rest of my Bitcoin Cash if I don't see significant changes in the coming months.
Wow! And did anybody respond to that?
Oh yeah, I mean, people say I'm an asshole or I should go ahead and sell right now because I'm secretly being paid by Calvin or something stupid like that. I mean, that's all stupid crap. I mean, I don't really pay attention to that, I mean, I tend to think that the community that is most welcoming is the one that you want to invest in, the one that allows the most connectivity. And Bitcoin SV is generally like that, though I think they could be a little bit more friendly. I mean, obviously, like, you know, yeah, I think they could be a bit more friendly sometimes, but they're more friendly than people in Bitcoin Cash right now, certainly, and in BTC.
Well, yeah, I mean, also it's kind of like how nicely and friendly can you be before you start to say, look, I've told you this a number of times already, and things aren't changing, so we're gonna have to switch it up because what I'm doing at the moment isn't working, so therefore I'll try and sue you. Maybe that will stop you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that works, but
Well, yeah, but it's worth trying because nothing else is working at the moment.
I don't think that like using like force against someone illegitimately is necessarily okay. But
Well, yeah, but we'll see if it works. I mean, if it works, great.
no, illegitimate force is not good, regardless whether it works.
Yeah, but I mean, whether it's legitimate or not, the fact is you're going to stop somebody from building a system that facilitates child pornography.
I don't think that like people again. There's just I think if you haven't been in Bitcoin Cash for a while, so I guess I understand it. I think there's a lot more debate happening than you maybe think.
But we're running out of time, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and so ultimately, like the economics itself are gonna kill it, regardless. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you're gonna if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. But there's all this stupid stuff about like none of that matters. What matters is if it's going to work economically or not.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
these questions are going to be resolved without calling anybody stupid and without even worrying about all this legal stuff. Like Bitcoin Cash right now is not following a good economic model. I'm not talking about the legal stuff right now. What I'm just talking about is if they refuse to scale and they want to have hard forks every 6 months that are going to continually divide the network effect, and they want to constantly add these untested changes into the protocol and have an unstable platform, then that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's it. Enough. That's all that needs to really be said, and it will die long before it has any opportunity to do anything nefarious if that's what's going to happen.
Agreed. Agreed.
My thought is, I have friends and business interests in Bitcoin Cash. If people are willing to change and be more rational, I'm totally open to that. But
Doesn't look like that's going to happen, though, does it?
I guess I have a much different degree of tolerance than you on this kind of issue, but that's fine. We don't need to agree on the level of tolerance someone should have for people who they disagree with. If you want to write people off, you're free to do that. I could not care less. But I don't have any necessary reason to do that right now.
Yeah, no. I just got issues with somebody promoting something that I know is wrong and isn't going to work.
Where have I promoted it?
No, not you.
Oh, okay.
Like, Roger.
I mean, I think if you read what Roger actually writes, he's trying to push Bitcoin Cash generally in a more rational direction. Did you read the other day where he said that I think BSV is right in locking down the protocol?
Oh, actually, I think I did hear him say that. Yeah. I think that was maybe him throwing the BSV, trying to build bridges because he knows he's going to have to cross it soon.
I think that Roger's a very honest and principled person, and I think that he gives. I think that he says what he says, and he means what he says. I don't think that he's doing it for any like ulterior motive. I think he honestly believes Bitcoin Cash should be more like that. And if Bitcoin Cash is not like that, I don't know. Maybe he would change his investment strategy. I have no idea.
But what I'm saying is like we've already discussed and agreed on almost everything so far. So how come Roger can't see what we can see? And why is he still telling people to buy it when we're telling him, look, what you're doing is not going to work. Stop telling people that it is going to work.
Because he disagrees. I don't know. I mean, that's really not my concern, to be honest. So it shouldn't be your concern. Your concern should be building something valuable for other people.
Oh, yeah, well, the only reason I'm concerned is because, like I said, I've written a book on my own mental health because I went absolutely mental. And basically what Roger is doing by getting people to buy Bitcoin Cash is setting them up for a huge loss, which is going to have very detrimental mental health effects.
Yeah, I know. I mean, maybe if that's true, if that's true, if that's what happens, yeah, people losing money is never good. I don't want people to lose money, but I also can't save everybody from losing money.
Yeah, but we can try. You can stop
Well, okay,
wearing
so
you can stop wearing
why don't you pick
BCH
another?
merchandise.
Why don't you pick another cause? Because there's plenty of other stupid investments. Why don't you pick one of those to go and rally around too?
Well, I mean, my intention is to go into mental health when all this cryptocurrency is done and dusted.
Yeah, I just mean like there's plenty of other stupid investments. Like if you think that's a stupid investment, there's no reason to like make that your own crusade to stop one people. Like people invest in stupid housing projects, people invest in stupid speculative ventures all the time. I mean, I guess I don't understand what the point in worrying about it is.
Oh no, I won't worry about it. But it's annoying in the fact that those resources could currently be going onto BSV and providing a peer-to-peer electronic cash system for the world. And what he's
Yeah, and
doing
I,
is
I
wasting his
think
resources.
I think the best way, look, based on what I know, and it's limited, but based on what I've seen and heard, and the best way to have gotten people like that onto BSV would have been to tone down the rhetoric, stop suing people, and invite them and make it economically valuable, openly economically valuable. Incentivize connectivity. Don't sue people. I'm sorry. I just think that's stupid. I think that creates unbridgeable divides. As a business person, once you get sued by somebody who's a big player in another space, you might not ever want to participate in that space again. Um, I, I've only seen maybe one side of what happened behind the hash war behind the scenes.
I was
And
just
I
going to
just
say
think,
that. Yeah. There was I heard a rumor that that those guys in BCH actually tried to take down all the BSV nodes.
they might have, yeah. I mean,
It was underhand.
yeah, BTC tried to do that to like they actually did that to like Bitcoin XT and stuff like that during some of the earliest attempts to make a block size increase. They definitely like DDoS different nodes and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess there's just sort of a bad blood, really. You know. If Roger was
Yeah.
involved in that, you can understand why Craig would be a little bit upset.
Okay, but I can also understand. I don't even know if he was involved in that or not, but I can understand. I personally definitely understand why someone like Roger would be upset at Craig. Even if I have no problems with either of them, I understand why they would have a problem with each other.
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's just so Craig wasn't happy with the fact that Roger tried to take down the BSV network, and Roger's not happy that Craig is suing him. Yeah.
Well, it may be
All's
more than
fair
that.
in love and war.
It may be more than that. I mean, it could be the case that I don't know what was going on behind the scenes that made those guys suddenly hostile to each other. I know if you looked at the history of that split, the BCH BSV split, Roger didn't come over to ABC specifically. He didn't endorse ABC until like the last minute.
Oh really?
Yeah, it was like a couple days before the hard fork or something like that. Like it was very last minute. Everyone was wondering what Bitcoin.com and Roger would do, and you know I think that tells you something. I think that tells you that maybe something happened behind the scenes that pushed him over the edge. And whether that was the right decision or not, in the moment it may have felt like the right decision. So I don't know. I mean, none of this even matters. Like all this like personality jockeying, all this obsession with like who was right and who was wrong and who wronged who and who screwed who and who was
It's
the
like a
bad
soap
guy.
opera.
It's stupid. It's just so stupid. Like BSP people are like ridiculous in worrying about that stuff.
It's
Oh,
yeah, but
I'm
it's
gonna feel
entertaining. You know, you've got
personally affected because I think that Roger screwed Craig. Screw that stuff. You don't need to worry about that any of that. If you think you have the right technology and the right economic model, the right monetary model, just worry about that. Don't worry about anything else.
yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, but I mean, people always like to feel as though they've got the moral high ground, gives them more motivation.
Yeah, and that's just dumb. Like that's lazy. That's like giving yourself, it's giving yourself unearned virtue, right?
Giving yourself a
Like
pat on the back.
it's not proof of work. It's like, oh well, I'm more virtuous than you. I haven't done anything, but I'm more virtuous because I think better than you. That's just like such a low tier way of thinking and being proud of yourself. I think it makes much more sense to go out and try to build something useful with Bitcoin SV if that's what you think is valuable, than dicking around trying to like punish punish people for perceived slights against you or against your favorite influencer in BSV.
Yeah. I'd agree with what you're saying. But we're all human. We've all got different triggers and stuff. Some things
Well,
make
yeah.
us
So
smile.
So you should apply that to the same people in BCH and recognize that if you think someone's behaving irrationally, it may be because one of their triggers is being hit in a way that if you stopped it, they would start seeing more rationally. That's all.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I mean, I was trying to, I had a show with Roger, and I was like talking to him nicely. But it's kind of like he seems to be ignoring me. So I just thought, well, if he's ignoring me, I may as well just troll him.
That's your choice. Whatever you want to do.
Right, I mean, I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
That's
And
fine. If you have fun doing that, then go ahead. I mean, I don't know.
well, I'm also, I know that I've provided a lot of fun and entertainment to a lot of other people during my trolling as well, because it's fairly juvenile and immature, but funny.
Yeah, that's good.
Well,
So
Derek,
what
yeah, right.
anything
Well,
else?
I was just looking at the time. We've actually been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Would you believe it?
Wow. Yeah, well, we probably spent an hour talking about my T-shirt. So
Well, I have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Actually, it's been a pleasure.
cool, awesome. Well, it was fun chatting to you too. Like I said, I really enjoyed your interview with TK. He's a super awesome guy. Everybody should follow TK and listen to him more because he's a really brilliant guy.
Yeah. So, do you think that? I mean, you seem like you seem like you've seen the light and the vision and recognise that basically at the moment there is only BSV because all the other camps are completely wrong. Are both Isaac and Steve on the same sort of page as you on that?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't changed anything. Everything I'm saying is basically the same thing I've been saying since 2016, 2017. So if Bitcoin Cash changed, then they're the ones who changed, not me. So I'm not
Mm.
sure I've like seen any lights. I mean, very few things. I'll tell you. Okay, so there are a couple things that I have changed my views on in the last year. Uh, one substantial thing is the idea that merchant adoption is super important in the short term. I love merchant adoption, but I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think it's a sufficient strategy. In the early days of Bitcoin, I definitely thought merchant adoption was like the only thing to do. Um, Changed my mind about that, and
So what
then
what did you change your mind to?
oh well, I think that time is too short to do that. I think instead you need to get large enterprises doing large amounts of transactions
Yeah,
on the blockchain,
corporates.
and you need to enable people to earn Bitcoin through sharing their data and stuff like that, and micropayments and services, things that they can earn it without having to go set up a stupid account on an exchange, which
Yeah.
is time intensive and actually takes away a lot of the benefits of Bitcoin. Because if you have to pay a fee to buy Bitcoin and to withdraw your Bitcoin, then it sort of defeats the purpose and the financial benefit of micropayments because you've already paid the fee, right? So it's
Yeah.
no longer necessarily makes sense for you. Earning it though is a completely different thing. Once you earn it and you can use it in commerce and use it in trade or use it as a store of value, all that stuff, like that makes way more sense. So that's been one thing. The other thing I've changed is the belief that so when Bitcoin Cash first started and there were like hard forks every 6 months, I was always concerned about the idea of hard forks being like a thing. But I thought, okay, well, if they're every 6 months and they're on a regular schedule, that will be stable. And then I realized that that's very dumb of me and that that's not stable at all and that will create forks and
Mm.
community splits every year or so at least, or every other year. If it doesn't happen in one fork schedule, it'll happen at the next one. And Bitcoin Cash almost had that with this new miner tax thing. So I think having a community model around forking every 6 months doesn't make any sense and is not stable at all. And that instead you kind of just need to try to lock the protocol down as much as possible and make changes as little as possible. So those are two big things I've changed on. But other than that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people in BSV will say things like, "Oh, you just don't understand that you're talking about BSV," or "Deryk, you've finally seen the light." But I don't know. If you go read everything I've written, there's nothing I've said that contradicts anything
Mm.
with BSV. Um, so as far as Isaac and Steve, I mean, I don't know. They can speak for themselves. I don't want to put words in their mouth. Um,
Yeah.
we all own BSV. This should be all. That should be enough for anybody who cares about the question. What their specific views are. I guess their own business. Maybe they'll come on the show. That'd be kind of fun. You can ask them why they support child pornography.
I will do that. I will revel in it. Excuse me, why on earth do you support child pornography?
I can understand the fun in asking that question. Like I'm not offended that you asked it because it's kind of amusing and it's kind of a cheeky way of
exactly. It's kind of funny.
I get it.
Yeah, it's kind of it's sarcastic humor.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, well, on that show, Deryk, I will say it's been a pleasure meeting you because it's been 2 hours 20 minutes. I hope my hard drive has been recording all of this, so I shall put this up on YouTube tomorrow evening and share it out with everybody.
Cool. Yeah, it was fun chatting. I'm glad you had me on, and I'm glad we were able to see that we for the most part agree on.
Indeed. Well, you know what I'm looking for. How long should we do this poll for about your BCH merchandise shirt? What, 24 hours, a day, 3 days, a week?
I shouldn't have even mentioned that.
It's gonna happen, mate. It's gonna be funny.
Now we're gonna get a stupid poll.
Yep, indeed. Because I've got nothing better to do.
I'm totally open to it. So yeah, give it 24 hours at least, and we'll see what people think.
Excellent. I will do that right now.
But phrase it honestly. Don't give something away, because the way you phrase it can bias the results.
Totally.
And you're totally going to bias the results.
Absolutely. Why would I risk it? Or why would I risk it otherwise?
Oh gosh. All right. Well, thanks for having me on. Maybe we'll do this again. Good luck with your show.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
It's a neat idea. I'm glad you're out there creating content. It's always fun to see. We need more shows in the Bitcoin space in general. So good luck with that. Yeah, we do. And if you know anybody, I mean, because the whole idea of this original gangster, podcast and channel is the fact that I'm just going to tell it straight. Literally, I'm not. There's not going to be any of this beating around the bush, high-fiving somebody who I think is a scammer, slapping them on the back. It's I'm going to tell them straight. Literally. Oh. Yeah, I think you did a good job with me. It was definitely an unorthodox interview, I'll say.
Thanks. Well, yeah, so
I wasn't sure whether I was just going to leave or not, but I actually enjoyed the conversation. So your unorthodox style kept me entertained at least.
Good. Well, I've only just sort of started this show, but I would like to kind of worm my way up the ranks. Kind of getting a reputation amongst BCHers and BTCers, and I want them on the show because I could get the guys in BSV on the show, all the big hitters, but I kind of I've already done that. It's kind of and it's kind of it's all very well having a show, them giving out more information and stuff, which is great, and people do love to hear them talking. But I want BCHers and BTCers on this show. So we can have full on hardcore questions. For example, I'm hopefully getting a notable BTC on the show on Sunday, and the first question is going to be what about this SegWit thing? You know what? I don't think a lot of BTCs even know what SegWit is.
I highly doubt they understand that it's a nasty little hack and a subsidy.
Yeah. So they need to be asked these questions because I've heard so many times that Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and that douchebag Anthony Pompilano talking about BTC as though it's Bitcoin. Somebody needs to say to him, look, mate, do you know what SegWit is? Because if you don't, you need to. Because
he probably just thinks the very canned, politically correct. Oh well, SegWit increases the block size and leaves it at that. Something stupid like that, or it fixes the malleability problem. Jesus, I can't talk right now. Yeah, that's what people think. You realize pretty quickly most of them have no clue about the terms they're even talking about. So they don't even realize that the Lightning Network white paper says that blocks need to be at least 133 megabytes big. The actual original paper says that.
Wow.
Well, they're being conned by a bunch of people who have pushed a technology that even according to its white paper will not work by the model they're following. and they don't even have a clue.
Well, you know what? This is actually quite interesting. What I have just decided from our little discussion that we've just had right there and then, my goal of this show is to get Anthony Pompilano on my show. That's going to be my goal. When that happens, I will have achieved my target, and then I will probably shut it down.
Be very nice when you have. Don't call him a pedophile in the email. Wait to call him a pedophile once you have him in the hot seat.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with it. But that's I don't quite know how I'm going to do it, but that's going to be my goal. So, worm my way up there until I get his attention, and then he's like, right, Anthony, let's have it. Get on this show. Him and Mike Novogratz, the both of them. 2 against 1. I don't care. I'll take on anybody.
Well, good luck. I mean, I hope this was a good conversation for you.
It was, mate. I've been laughing. It's been fun.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again. I look forward to seeing it up on YouTube.
All right. Cheers, mate. See you soon.
Yeah, bye.
See you later. Bye.